The moment Harry Potter realized he could command Dementors and turn them against Voldemort Chapter 1, The Awakening, Harry stared at the ceiling of his bedroom at number 4, Privet Drive, his mind racing with memories that wouldn't let him sleep. The Department of Mysteries. Sirius falling through the veil. Voldemort possessing him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it all happening again. "Happy birthday to me," he muttered, glancing at the clock as it ticked past midnight. 16 years old now. Fat lot of good it did him. A tapping at the window drew his attention. An owl, not Hedwig, hovered outside with a letter. Harry pushed himself off the bed and opened the window, taking the letter from the bird's extended leg. "Thanks," he said as the owl hooted softly before taking flight again. The envelope bore the familiar Hogwarts seal. Inside was a note from Dumbledore himself, not the usual school supply list. "Harry, I will be arriving at your aunt and uncle's home tomorrow at 8 p.m. to escort you to the Burrow for the remainder of your summer holidays. Be packed and ready. Albus Dumbledore." Harry read the letter twice. Dumbledore himself was coming to get him. After a whole year of avoiding him. This had to be serious. He didn't sleep much that night, and the next day crawled by. The Dursleys, hearing that another freak was coming to their house, made themselves scarce, which suited Harry just fine. At 7:55, Harry sat on his trunk in the living room, Hedwig's cage beside him. The doorbell rang precisely at 8 p.m. Harry opened the door to find Dumbledore standing there, wearing a midnight blue traveling cloak over a purple suit. His right hand was blackened and shriveled, looking dead. "Good evening, Harry," said Dumbledore pleasantly. "I see you are packed and ready." "Excellent." "Your hand," Harry began, staring at it. "A story for another time," Dumbledore said lightly. "We have a brief stop to make before heading to the Burrow, if you don't mind." Within minutes, they had apparat to a village Harry didn't recognize. Dumbledore explained they needed to recruit a new teacher, Horace Slughorn, and Harry was the bait. The meeting went exactly as Dumbledore had planned, with Slughorn ultimately agreeing to return to Hogwarts after meeting the Chosen One. Later that night, Harry found himself at the Burrow, greeted enthusiastically by the Weasleys. Ron and Hermione bombarded him with questions about his meeting with Dumbledore, but Harry was more interested in the news. "Dad says the Ministry's in shambles," Ron told him as they sat in his bedroom. "They're admitting you-know-who's back now, but they've got no clue how to handle it." "And the Dementors?" Harry asked, a chill running down his spine as he remembered their last encounter. "Gone from Azkaban," Hermione said grimly. "The Ministry claims they're trying to round them up, but everyone knows they've joined you-know-who." Harry's dreams that night were filled with hooded figures and whispers he couldn't quite make out. The next few weeks passed in a blur of Quidditch, degnoming the garden, and trying to piece together what Voldemort might be planning. Their Hogwarts letters arrived, along with a surprise: Harry had been made Quidditch captain. "That gives you equal status with prefects," exclaimed Hermione. "You can use our bathroom now and everything." Their trip to Diagon Alley was tense. The once vibrant shopping district was now grim and deserted. Many shops were boarded up, and Ministry posters warning about Death Eaters covered every available surface. Their only moment of levity came from visiting Fred and George's joke shop, which was doing a roaring business despite, or perhaps because of, the dark times. September 1st arrived, and they boarded the Hogwarts Express. After a brief stop at Slughorn's compartment for lunch, Harry realizing with discomfort that he was being collected, he decided to follow Malfoy under his invisibility cloak. What he discovered confirmed his suspicions: Malfoy was up to something involving Voldemort. The first few weeks at Hogwarts fell into a routine. Harry excelled in potions thanks to the Half-Blood Prince's book, struggled with nonverbal spells in defense against the dark arts, and had his first private lesson with Dumbledore, learning about Voldemort's past. Then came the first Hogsmeade weekend in October. Bloody freezing out, Ron complained as they walked down the path to the village. "Should have stayed in the common room." "You're the one who wanted to get out of the castle," Hermione reminded him, pulling her scarf tighter. Harry felt it before anyone else, a sudden drop in temperature that went beyond the October chill. His breath fogged in front of him, and a familiar sense of dread washed over him. "No," he whispered, looking up at the sky. "No, it can't be," but it was. Dementors, at least a dozen of them, swooping down toward Hogsmeade Village. Students screamed and began running back toward the castle. But Harry knew they'd never make it in time. He pulled out his wand, thinking of his happiest memory. "Expecto Patronum," he bellowed. The silver stag erupted from his wand and charged the nearest Dementors, driving them back temporarily. "Run!" Harry shouted to the younger students frozen in terror. Back to the castle, now. Ron and Hermione had their wands out too, but only Hermione managed a corporeal Patronus, her silver otter swimming through the air. It wasn't enough. There were too many Dementors, and they were closing in from all sides. Harry felt the cold seeping into his bones as the closest Dementor floated directly toward him, ignoring his Patronus completely. It reached out with a decayed, scabbed hand. "Get back!" Harry yelled desperately, his Patronus flickering as despair threatened to overwhelm him. "Stop!" And to his utter shock, it did. The Dementor froze, its hood facing Harry as if confused. The other Dementors continued their attack on the fleeing students, but this one remained still, hovering in place. "What the—" Ron began. Harry didn't think. Acting on pure instinct, he pointed at the Dementor and commanded, "Protect us. Drive the others back." For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, the Dementor turned and glided toward its fellows, positioning itself between them and Harry. The other Dementors paused, seeming to communicate silently with the rogue one. "Harry," Hermione's voice was barely a whisper, "what are you doing?" "I don't know," Harry answered truthfully, not taking his eyes off the scene. "But it's working." The standoff lasted only seconds before professors arrived, their patron uses charging the Dementor group. In the confusion, Harry's commanded Dementor slipped away with the others, fleeing back toward the mountains. McGonagall hurried the students back to the castle, her face white with shock and anger. A Dementor attack in broad daylight. Right outside the school. Harry said nothing about what had happened. Even as Hermione shot him meaningful glances, he kept quiet. What could he say? "I think I can control Dementors now." It sounded insane, even to him. Later that night, safely back in Gryffindor Tower, Ron and Hermione cornered him in a quiet corner of the common room. "Spill," Ron demanded. "What happened out there?" Harry ran a hand through his hair. "I honestly don't know. I just told it to stop, and it did." "That's impossible," Hermione said automatically, then paused. "I mean, it should be impossible. Dementors don't follow orders from wizards. That's why the Ministry has such trouble controlling them." "Well, this one did," Harry said. "And when I told it to protect us from the others, it tried to do that too." "Blimey," Ron whispered. "You can control Dementors?" "I don't know if 'control' is the right word," Harry said uncomfortably. "It was more like, it listened to me. Like it recognized me somehow." Hermione chewed her lip, thinking hard. "This is unprecedented, Harry. I've never read anything about wizards commanding Dementors directly. The Ministry uses negotiations and containment charms, but direct commands?" She shook her head. "We need to research this." "Research what?" Harry asked. "There's probably nothing in the library about this." "Then we need to test it," she said decisively. "See if it was a fluke or if you really can communicate with them." "Test it?" Ron looked horrified. "How exactly?" "Excuse me, Professor McGonagall, can we borrow a Dementor for Harry to practice on?" "Don't be ridiculous, Ron," Hermione snapped. "But we need to understand what happened. This could be important." Harry nodded slowly. "I'll talk to Dumbledore. Our next lesson is in a few days." But as he lay in bed that night, Harry couldn't help wondering, why him? Why now? And what did it mean that creatures of despair and darkness seemed to recognize his authority? Dumbledore's office looked the same as always, filled with silver instruments and portraits of former headmasters. Harry sat across from the headmaster, having just finished viewing a memory about Voldemort's mother. "Professor," Harry said as Dumbledore finished explaining about Mary P. Gaunt, "something happened in Hogsmeade." "Something strange." Dumbledore's piercing blue eyes focused on him. "I heard about the Dementor attack, of course. Most concerning." Harry took a deep breath. "One of the Dementors obeyed me." To Harry's surprise, Dumbledore didn't look shocked. He merely steepled his fingers, his good hand and his blackened one, and gazed at Harry thoughtfully. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said quietly. Harry recounted the incident in detail. When he finished, Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. "I feared something like this might occur," he finally said. Harry blinked. "You knew this might happen?" "I suspected it was possible," Dumbledore corrected. "Harry, you have a unique connection to death. Your survival of the killing curse, your possession of the invisibility cloak, your experience at the Department of Mysteries, particularly your proximity to the Veil. And now, it seems, an affinity with Dementors." "But Dementors work for Voldemort," Harry said. "They're dark creatures." "Dementors are indeed dark, but they are not inherently evil as we understand it," Dumbledore explained. "They are manifestations of despair and decay, natural forces, in their way. They allied with Voldemort because he offers them free rein to feed. But their true nature is more complex." Harry tried to process this. "So you think I can control them because of my connection to death?" "Not control, perhaps," Dumbledore said carefully. "But command, yes. There is a distinction. Control implies total dominance. Command implies they recognize your authority but maintain some autonomy. Should I try to use this against Voldemort?" Dumbledore's expression grew grave. "That, Harry, is a question with no easy answer. Such power comes with tremendous responsibility and risk. Dementors are dangerous allies. They feed on happiness, on souls. Commanding them means exposure to their influence." "You think they might corrupt me," Harry stated flatly. "I think," Dumbledore said gently, "that you must be extraordinarily careful. But I also believe that you, Harry, with your capacity for love and your pure heart, might be uniquely equipped to wield such power without being consumed by it." Harry left Dumbledore's office with more questions than answers, but with a strange determination forming. If he could command Dementors, creatures that even Voldemort could only ally with, not truly control, then maybe, just maybe, this could change everything. "This is mental," Ron whispered as they crept through the Forbidden Forest 2 nights later. "Absolutely mental." "You didn't have to come," Harry reminded him, holding his lit wand higher. "And let you face Dementors alone." "Not bloody likely," Ron muttered. Hermione moved silently beside them, her expression determined despite her obvious fear. "Remember the plan. We test your ability from a safe distance. At the first sign of trouble, we cast Patron Uses and retreat." Harry nodded. According to Hagrid, Dementors had been spotted in the deepest part of the forest, far from the Centaur territories. It was a desperate risk, but Harry needed to know if what happened in Hogsmeade was real or a fluke. They walked for nearly an hour, going deeper into the forest than they'd ever ventured before. The trees grew closer together, blocking out the moonlight. Strange noises echoed around them, scuttling, rustling, occasional howls. "Maybe they're not here anymore," Ron suggested hopefully. Then they felt it, the unmistakable cold that had nothing to do with the night air. Frost began forming on the nearby leaves. Their breath fogged before them. "Harry," Hermione's voice quavered slightly, "remember, test from a distance." But Harry stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed to be closer. Needed to be sure. A dark shape glided between the trees ahead, then another. 2 Dementors, moving slowly as if patrolling. "Stay back," Harry told his friends, then moved forward alone. The Dementors sensed him immediately. They turned, their faceless hoods orienting toward him. Harry felt the familiar dread washing over him, the screams of his mother beginning to echo in his mind. "Stop," he commanded, his voice firm despite his fear. "Don't come any closer." The Dementors paused. They hovered, seemingly confused or waiting. Heart racing, Harry took another step forward. "Can you understand me?" The Dementors made no sound, but one of them inclined its hood slightly in what might have been a nod. "Bloody hell," Ron whispered from behind him. Emboldened, Harry continued. "Why did you obey me in Hogsmeade? What makes me different?" The Dementors remained silent, but Harry felt something, a cold tendril of thought brushing against his mind. Not like Voldemort's invasive presence, but something more alien, more ancient. Images flashed in his mind, the graveyard in Little Hangleton, the Department of Mysteries, the veil fluttering though no wind touched it. "Death," Harry whispered, understanding dawning. "You recognize death in me." The Dementor nearest to him glided closer, its rattling breath the only sound in the quiet forest. Harry stood his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to run. "Harry!" Hermione called, her voice tight with fear. "That's close enough." But Harry raised a hand, silencing her. "What do you want?" he asked the creature. Again, that strange communication, not words, but impressions. Freedom. Hunger. Recognition. If I commanded you, would you follow me instead of Voldemort?" The Dementor's hood tilted, considering. Then, slowly, it lowered itself in what could only be described as a bow. Harry's mind raced with possibilities. If he could command Dementors, direct them away from innocent people and toward Death Eaters instead. "Harry," Hermione's voice broke through his thoughts. "We should go. Now." He nodded, backing away slowly. "Thank you," he told the Dementors, feeling absurdly polite. I might call on you again." The creatures made no move to follow as the trio hurried back toward the castle, only when they reached the edge of the forest did Harry realize he was shaking. "That was incredible," Ron breathed. "Scary as hell, but incredible." "It was extremely dangerous," Hermione countered, but her eyes were wide with wonder. "Harry, do you realize what this means?" "It means I've got a new weapon against Voldemort," Harry said grimly. "One he won't expect." "It means we need to learn everything we can about Dementors," Hermione corrected. "Their origins, their nature, their limitations. Knowledge is power, Harry." "Speaking of power," Ron said as they slipped back into the castle, "what are you going to do with this ability?" Harry considered the question carefully. "I don't know yet. But I'm done just reacting to Voldemort. It's time we took the fight to him." Over the next few weeks, Harry divided his time between classes, Quidditch practice, Dumbledore's lessons about Voldemort's past, and secretly researching Dementors with Ron and Hermione. The library yielded little new information. Dementors were mysterious even to the wizarding world, with most books focusing on protection against them rather than their nature. "Listen to this," Hermione said one evening in the common room, keeping her voice low. "Dementors are believed to be among the oldest magical beings, possibly predating wizard kind itself. Some scholars theorize they were not created but emerged naturally as manifestations of human despair and mortality." "That fits with what Dumbledore said," Harry replied, glancing around to make sure no one was eavesdropping. "That they're like natural forces." "Here's something interesting," she continued. "While the Ministry classifies Dementors as beings rather than beasts, their level of intelligence remains debated. They appear to communicate with one another through unknown means and demonstrate strategic coordination during hunts." "They communicated with me," Harry said. "Not with words exactly, but impressions. Images. Legilimency." Hermione suggested. Harry shook his head. Different. Less invasive. More like, showing me things they thought I'd understand. Ron, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. The question is, what are you planning to do with them, Harry? Because controlling Dementors, that's dark stuff. I'm not controlling them, Harry said automatically. I'm directing them. Same difference to most people, Ron pointed out. If word gets out you're commanding Dementors, people will freak. They might even think you're going dark. The uncomfortable truth of Ron's words sank in. Harry remembered his second year, when everyone thought he was the heir of Slytherin. This would be 100 times worse. Then no one can know, Harry decided. Not yet. But I can't just ignore this ability. Not when it could help defeat Voldemort. We need to test the limits, Hermione said pragmatically. How many can you command at once? How complex can your orders be? How far can they understand abstract concepts? And we need to figure out why you have this ability in the first place, Ron added. No offense, mate, but it's bloody weird. Harry couldn't argue with that. It was weird. And despite Dumbledore's theories about his connection to death, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, something tied to his connection with Voldemort himself. Their research continued alongside their regular studies. November arrived, bringing with it the first Quidditch match of the season, Gryffindor vs. Slytherin. Despite the distraction of his Dementor ability and his growing suspicions about Malfoy, Harry led his team to a decisive victory, much to Ron's relief after his pre-match nerves. But even Quidditch couldn't distract Harry for long. Reports of Dementor attacks across Britain filled the Daily Prophet. Muggle deaths attributed to gas leaks or sudden heart failure were becoming more frequent. Voldemort was using the Dementors freely, and the Ministry seemed powerless to stop them. I need to try again, Harry told Ron and Hermione after reading about an attack in Yorkshire that left 3 Muggles soulless. I need to understand this power better. Not in the forest again, Hermione said firmly. It's too risky. If Hagrid or a centaur spotted us. Then where? Harry asked. It's not like we can practice in the room of requirement. Actually, Ron said slowly, maybe we can. Harry and Hermione stared at him. Not with real Dementors, Ron clarified. But the room can transform into whatever we need, right? What if we asked it for a place to practice dealing with Dementors? It can't create living creatures, Hermione pointed out. Or at least, it shouldn't be able to. No, but it might create something close enough for practice, Ron insisted. Like a simulation or something. It was worth a try. That night, they paced before the blank wall on the 7th floor, concentrating on the need for a place to practice Harry's unusual ability. When the door appeared and they entered, they found themselves in a large, dimly lit stone chamber. At the far end stood a single figure in a tattered cloak, hovering motionless. Is that real? Ron whispered, instinctively reaching for his wand. Hermione approached cautiously, examining the figure. I think it's some kind of magical construct. Not alive, but enchanted to behave like a Dementor. Harry felt none of the cold, none of the despair that accompanied real Dementors. But the construct looked remarkably authentic. He stepped forward. Stop, he commanded. Nothing happened. It's not responding, Harry said, disappointed. I guess the room can't replicate whatever connection I have with real Dementors. Try touching it, Ron suggested. Touch a Dementor. Hermione looked horrified. Ron, it's not real, Ron reminded her. And maybe Harry needs physical contact to establish a connection. Hesitantly, Harry approached the hovering figure. It remained still, showing none of the predatory movement of a real Dementor. Steeling himself, Harry reached out and touched the edge of its cloak. The effect was immediate. The construct seemed to awaken, its hood turning toward Harry. Still, there was no cold, no dread, just an awareness, as if it was waiting for instructions. "Float to the left," Harry said clearly. The construct glided smoothly to the left. "Now to the right." Again, it obeyed perfectly. "Wicked," Ron breathed. "It's like a training dummy." For the next hour, they experimented. Harry found he could give the construct complex commands, directing it through a series of movements and behaviors. He could even command it to target specific objects in the room while avoiding others. "This is brilliant," Harry said as they prepared to leave. "I can practice here until I'm confident enough to try with real Dementors again." "Harry," Hermione said seriously, "I've been thinking about something. You said real Dementors communicated with you through images and impressions. What if you could do the same back to them? Instead of just giving verbal commands?" Harry considered this. "Like, projecting thoughts at them?" "Exactly. If they naturally communicate that way with each other, it might be more effective than spoken commands." It was an intriguing idea, and Harry spent the next several nights in the room of requirement, practicing with the construct. He found that by concentrating on mental images rather than words, he could indeed direct the construct more efficiently. It responded faster and seemed to understand nuance better. But a construct wasn't a real Dementor. Eventually, Harry knew, he would need to test his growing skills on the real thing. The opportunity came sooner than expected. December arrived with a heavy snowfall. Most students were counting down the days until the holidays, but Harry was preoccupied with Dumbledore's lessons, watching Malfoy on the Marauders map, and continuing his secret Dementor training. The last Hogsmeade weekend before the holidays was cancelled due to security concerns, leaving the students restless and confined to the castle. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were in the library, researching Horcruxes, though Hermione was the only one who knew the term, as Harry had been sworn to secrecy by Dumbledore. "I still don't understand what we're looking for exactly," Ron complained, shutting yet another dusty tome. "Dark objects that contain pieces of the soul. That could be anything." "We'll know it when we find it," Harry said, which wasn't particularly helpful. A sudden commotion near the library entrance caught their attention. Parvati Patil rushed in, her face pale. "There's an attack," she gasped to Madame Pants, who looked up sharply. "Death Eaters in Hogsmeade. Professor McGonagall is gathering all students in the Great Hall." The library erupted in nervous chatter as students gathered their things. Harry caught Ron and Hermione's eyes, and they shared a silent agreement. This wasn't a time to hide in the castle. They slipped away from the crowd heading to the Great Hall and made their way to the third floor, where they knew a secret passage led to Honeyduke's cellar. The One-Eyed Witch passage was their best chance to reach Hogsmeade undetected. "This is mad," Hermione whispered as they emerged in the sweet shop cellar. "We should get help." "The professors will be coming," Harry assured her. "But we need to see what's happening now." They crept upstairs to find Honeyduke's deserted, the owners presumably having fled or hidden. Through the front window, they could see chaos in the village street. Green and red spells flew through the air. Black-robed figures dueled with what appeared to be members of the Order of the Phoenix. "Look!" Ron pointed. "That's Tonks fighting Bellatrix." Indeed, Tonks was engaged in fierce combat with Bellatrix Lestrange outside the Three Broomsticks. Other Order members, Kingsley, Lupin, even Mr. Weasley, were scattered throughout the village, holding back the Death Eater assault. They must have been stationed here to guard the village, Hermione realized. But they're outnumbered. Harry's scar prickled painfully. He's not here, but he's excited. Voldemort's watching through someone's eyes. Then Harry felt it, the familiar, bone-deep cold. Dementors were approaching from the north end of the village, at least 20 of them gliding above the streets. "The Order doesn't see them yet," Harry said urgently. "They're focused on the Death Eaters." Without hesitation, Harry burst out of Honeyduke's, Ron and Hermione right behind him. They ran toward the fighting, dodging spells and debris. "Dementors!" Harry shouted to Lupin, who was nearest. "From the north." Lupin's head snapped in that direction, his eyes widening at the sight of the approaching horde. "Fall back," he called to the others. "Dementors incoming." Several Order members attempted patron uses, but the stress of simultaneous combat made it difficult to maintain the necessary happy thoughts. Only a few wispy shields appeared, not nearly enough to repel so many Dementors. Harry knew what he had to do, despite the risk of revealing his ability. He ran forward, positioning himself between the Order members and the approaching Dementors. "Harry, no!" Hermione cried, thinking he was sacrificing himself. But Harry stood his ground, staring up at the lead Dementors. He felt their hunger, their eagerness to feed on the chaos and fear of battle. "Stop," he commanded, his voice ringing with authority. To the astonishment of everyone watching, the Dementors halted their advance. They hovered, their hoods turning toward Harry. "You will not attack these people," Harry continued, focusing his thoughts as he had practiced. He projected images of the Death Eaters, trying to communicate his intent. "Those are your targets. Only them." The Dementors seemed to communicate among themselves, a silent conversation Harry could almost feel at the edges of his awareness. Then, as one, they changed direction, swooping toward the Death Eaters instead. Chaos erupted anew. The Death Eaters, expecting the Dementors to attack their enemies, were caught completely unprepared. Screams echoed through the village as the dark creatures descended upon Voldemort's followers. "Potter!" Bellatrix shrieked, her face contorted with rage and disbelief. "What have you done?" Harry didn't answer, focusing instead on maintaining his mental connection with the Dementors. It was harder with so many at once, like trying to direct 20 different people simultaneously. Some responded more readily than others, and a few seemed resistant, pulling away from his influence. "Retreat," called a Death Eater Harry didn't recognize. The Dark Lord must know of this. With cracks of apparition, the Death Eaters began to disappear, those who could still focus enough to do so. A few lay on the ground, twitching and moaning as Dementors hovered over them, drawing out their happiness. "Enough," Harry commanded the Dementors. "Don't take their souls. Leave them." Most of the Dementors reluctantly pulled back. Two continued feeding, ignoring Harry's command. Harry stepped closer, focusing all his will on these rebellious two. "I said enough." Finally, they withdrew, joining the others in a hovering circle around Harry. The Order members watched in stunned silence, wands still raised but unsure whether to intervene. "Harry," Lupin approached cautiously, his voice tight with confusion and concern, "what's happening? How are you doing this?" "I'll explain later," Harry said, not taking his eyes off the Dementors. He needed to decide what to do with them now. Sending them back to Voldemort was out of the question, but he couldn't bring them to Hogwarts either. "Go to the mountains north of here," he finally instructed them, projecting mental images of the remote peaks. "Stay there until I call for you. Harm no humans unless I command it." The Dementors lingered for a moment longer, their faceless hoods regarding Harry with what he somehow sensed was curiosity. Then, one by one, they glided away toward the mountains, dark shapes against the winter sky. As soon as they were gone, Harry felt a wave of exhaustion hit him. Controlling so many Dementors at once had drained him more than he realized. "Harry!" Hermione rushed to his side as his knees buckled. Ron caught him before he could fall. "I'm fine," Harry mumbled. "Just tired." The Order members surrounded them, their expressions ranging from awe to horror to suspicion. "We need to get him back to the castle," Tonks said, her hair shifting from battle-ready red to concerned pink. "And then someone had better explain what in Merlin's name just happened." "Potter controlled the Dementors," Kingsley stated, his deep voice unusually shaken. "I saw it with my own eyes, but I still don't believe it." "Not here," Lupin said firmly. "This isn't the place to discuss it. Hogwarts, now." As they helped Harry back toward the castle, he knew the secret was out. There would be no hiding his ability now, not from the Order, not from the Ministry, and certainly not from Voldemort. Everything had changed, and there was no going back. Dumbledore's office was crowded. McGonagall, Snape, Lupin, Tonks, and Kingsley stood in a semicircle before the desk, while Harry sat in a chair with Ron and Hermione hovering protectively behind him. The headmaster himself sat calmly behind his desk, his blue eyes fixed on Harry. "Perhaps," Dumbledore said mildly after hearing the various accounts of what had happened in Hogsmeade, "Harry should explain in his own words." All eyes turned to Harry. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "It started during the first Hogsmeade weekend," he began, explaining his initial discovery and subsequent experiments. He left out the midnight excursions into the Forbidden Forest, saying only that he'd had limited contact with Dementors to test his ability. When he finished, silence filled the office. "This is unprecedented," McGonagall finally said, her Scottish brogue more pronounced in her distress. "In all recorded history, no wizard has demonstrated the ability to command Dementors directly." "Not true, Minerva," Dumbledore corrected gently. "There are obscure accounts, mostly dismissed as legend. But in each case, the wizard in question had some unusual connection to death. Like surviving the killing curse," Lupin murmured. "Among other factors," Dumbledore nodded. Snape, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke. "The Dark Lord will consider this development troubling. He believes the Dementors are loyal to him alone." "Good," Harry said bluntly. "Let him worry for a change." "Don't be naive, Potter," Snape sneered. "He will not simply wring his hands in distress. He will seek to counter this advantage, perhaps by developing his own method of absolute control over the creatures." "Can he do that?" Harry asked, a chill running through him at the thought. "The Dark Lord has delved into magical domains few have dared explore," Snape replied. "I would not put it past him." "What matters now," Kingsley interjected, his deep voice commanding attention, "is how we proceed. This information will spread. Death Eaters witnessed it. They'll report to Voldemort, and word will reach the Ministry." "We must control the narrative," Tonks agreed. "Better to announce it on our terms than let rumors distort the truth." "No," Harry said firmly. "No announcements, no press releases. Let them wonder. Let Voldemort worry about what else I might be capable of." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with something like approval. "A strategic approach, Harry. Uncertainty can be a powerful weapon." "But the Dementors themselves," McGonagall pressed. "What do you intend to do with them, Potter? They cannot simply roam free, even in uninhabited mountains." It was the question Harry had been wrestling with since Hogsmeade. "I'm not sure yet, Professor. But I know they can sense fragmented souls." Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. "Can they indeed?" Harry nodded, remembering the impressions he'd received from the Dementors in the forest. "They showed me images of the graveyard where Voldemort was reborn. They sensed something broken about him." Ron and Hermione exchanged confused glances, but Dumbledore leaned forward, suddenly intense. "Harry, this could be invaluable information. If Dementors can sense Horcruxes, Albus." McGonagall interrupted, shocked at the mention of such dark magic. Dumbledore raised a hand. "Circumstances demand candor, Minerva. Those in this room can be trusted." He turned back to Harry. "We must explore this possibility immediately." "What exactly is a Horcrux?" Hermione asked, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. Dumbledore sighed deeply. "A Horcrux is an object in which a dark wizard has hidden a fragment of their soul to achieve immortality. Tom Riddle created multiple Horcruxes, which is why he did not truly die when his killing curse rebounded from Harry." Ron looked horrified. "He split his soul. On purpose?" "Indeed, Mr. Weasley. And until we find and destroy all these fragments, Voldemort cannot be truly defeated." The gravity of this revelation settled heavily on the room. Harry felt a strange mix of dread and hope. If the Dementors could help locate Horcruxes. "I'll need to work with them more," Harry said. Learn how to direct them precisely, understand what they can sense. A dangerous proposition, Snape observed coldly. Prolonged exposure to Dementors affects the mind, Potter. Even with this connection you possess. I'm aware of the risks, Harry said, matching Snape's tone. But if they can help us find Horcruxes, it's worth it. Not at the cost of your soul, Harry, Lupin said gently. My soul isn't at risk, Harry insisted. They don't want to feed on me. It's like they respect me, in their way. Nevertheless, Dumbledore interjected, caution is paramount. You will not work with the Dementors alone, Harry. Always have protection, capable wizards who can cast patron uses if needed. Ron and Hermione, Harry began. Our students, McGonagall cut in sharply. Talented, yes, but this requires experienced wizards. I'll help, Lupin volunteered. I have experience with dark creatures, and my Patronus is reliable. As will I, Tonks added, her hair shifting to a determined blue. Harry nodded, grateful but also impatient. Every day they delayed was another day Voldemort could prepare a countermeasure. When can we start? He asked. After the holidays, Dumbledore decided. You've earned a rest, Harry, and we need time to prepare properly. In the meantime, I suggest you continue your practice in the Room of Requirement. Focus on maintaining command over multiple constructs simultaneously. It wasn't the immediate action Harry wanted, but he recognized the wisdom in Dumbledore's caution. This power was too important, too potentially game-changing, to rush into recklessly. As the meeting concluded and everyone began to file out, Dumbledore called Harry back. A moment, Harry. When they were alone, Dumbledore regarded Harry with a mixture of pride and concern. You handled yourself admirably today. Many wizards would be tempted to abuse such power. I don't want power, Harry said truthfully. I just want to end this war. And therein lies the reason the Dementors respond to you, Dumbledore said softly. You command not from desire for dominance, but from necessity. Your purposes are pure, even when dealing with creatures of darkness. Do you really think they can help find the Horcruxes? It is a possibility worth exploring, Dumbledore confirmed. Dementors perceive souls differently than humans do. A fragmented soul might appear distinct to them. Harry nodded, hope building in his chest. Then we have a real chance. We have always had a chance, Harry, Dumbledore smiled. But now, perhaps, the path is a little clearer. As Harry left the office, his mind was racing with possibilities. For years, he had feared Dementors more than almost anything else. Now, they might become his greatest allies in the fight against Voldemort. The irony wasn't lost on him. The creatures that fed on happiness, that embodied despair, might ultimately bring hope to the wizarding world. News of Harry's ability spread through the Order of the Phoenix but was kept from the wider wizarding community. Dumbledore insisted on secrecy, believing that uncertainty about Harry's powers would unsettle Voldemort more than confirmed facts. The Christmas holidays arrived, and Harry went to the Burrow with Ron. Hermione spent the first week with her parents before joining them. The festive atmosphere was subdued by the ongoing war, but Mrs. Weasley did her best to create a sense of normalcy. On Christmas Eve, after dinner, Mr. Weasley pulled Harry aside. I thought you should know, he said in a low voice, checking that they weren't overheard, there's been unusual Death Eater activity. Raids on ancient libraries and private collections specializing in dark arts materials. Harry felt his stomach tighten. They're looking for information about Dementors. Mr. Weasley nodded grimly. Kingsley thinks so. Voldemort wants to understand what you can do and how to counter it. Has he found anything? Not that we know of. Information about Dementors is scarce, as you've discovered yourself. Harry had indeed found little in Hogwarts' library, even with Hermione's help. The few books that mentioned Dementors focused on protection against them, not their fundamental nature. There's something else, Mr. Weasley continued. Dementor attacks have nearly ceased since the Hogsmeade incident. It's as if Voldemort is holding them in reserve, afraid to deploy them where you might take control. It was a small victory, but Harry took satisfaction in it. At least some innocent people were being spared the Dementors' horrors. Christmas Day brought a brief respite from war concerns. They opened presents, enjoyed Mrs. Weasley's magnificent dinner, and listened to Celestina Warbeck on the wireless, much to Fleur's poorly concealed annoyance. Harry received a sweater from Mrs. Weasley, a broomstick servicing kit from Hermione, and an assortment of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes products from Fred and George. The most unexpected gift came from Lupin, a small, ancient-looking book bound in dark leather. "It's a journal," Lupin explained when Harry opened it. "Written by a wizard who claimed to have encountered Dementors before the Ministry began using them as prison guards. I found it in Sirius's family library at Grimmauld Place." Harry ran his fingers over the worn cover. "Thank you. This might be really helpful." "Just be careful with the information inside," Lupin warned. "Some of it is disturbing." The Black family wasn't known for their squeamishness about dark magic. That night, when the house had quieted, Harry read the journal by wandlight under his blankets. The writing was faded and the language archaic, but what he could decipher was fascinating. "The creatures come with the fog, drawn to despair like moths to flame," one entry read. "They feed not just on happiness but on hope itself, leaving only hollow shells behind. Yet they are not mindless beasts. There is intelligence in their hunting, purpose in their movements." Another passage caught Harry's attention. "I have observed that these dread beings respond differently to those who have touched death's veil. My companion, who survived a killing curse through his protective amulet, approached one without fear, and it seemed to recognize him as kin to its realm. It did not flee, but neither did it attack, instead regarding him with what I can only describe as curiosity." Harry's heart raced. This matched his own experience perfectly. But it was a later entry that truly sent a chill down his spine. "My research suggests these creatures existed before wizardkind, perhaps before humanity itself. They are not born nor do they truly die. They multiply in places of decay and suffering, emerging from the very fabric of despair. Some ancient texts name them as fragments of a greater whole, echoes of a primordial force that predates the separation of our world from the realm beyond the veil." Harry closed the book, his mind reeling. If Dementors were connected to the realm beyond the veil, the realm of death itself, that would explain their response to him, who had survived death's touch, and their ability to sense Voldemort's fractured soul. He fell asleep thinking of veils and fragments, of life and death, and of the strange power he now wielded. The rest of the holidays passed quickly. Harry shared what he had learned from the journal with Ron and Hermione, who were equally intrigued by the implications. If Dementors can sense soul fragments because they're connected to the realm of death, Hermione reasoned, then they should be able to detect Horcruxes, which are essentially fractured pieces of soul separated from their whole. "The question is," Ron added, "can Harry direct them precisely enough to locate something as small as a Horcrux? Commanding them in battle is one thing, but this would be like using a sledgehammer for delicate work." "I need more practice," Harry acknowledged. "More control." When they returned to Hogwarts in January, Harry threw himself into training with renewed determination. In the room of requirement, he worked with multiple Dementor constructs, refining his ability to give complex, precise commands through both verbal orders and mental impressions. Lupin and Tonks joined him twice weekly, providing guidance and protection. Lupin's expertise with dark creatures proved invaluable, while Tonks's aura training offered practical combat applications. "You're getting better," Tonks observed after a particularly successful session where Harry had directed 6 constructs to locate specific objects hidden throughout the room. "Your commands are more precise, and they respond faster." "It's still not the same as real Dementors," Harry said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Controlling multiple constructs simultaneously was mentally exhausting. "These don't have their own will to resist." "True," Lupin agreed, "but the principle is the same. You're developing the mental muscles needed to project your intentions clearly." January gave way to February, bringing more snow and bitter cold to the Hogwarts grounds. Harry continued his regular classes, Quidditch practice, and private lessons with Dumbledore, all while maintaining his secret Dementor training. The strain began to show, dark circles under his eyes, a shortness of temper, moments of distraction in class. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Hermione said worriedly one evening in the common room. "You need to rest." "I'm fine," Harry insisted, though he could barely keep his eyes open as he attempted to finish his Transfiguration essay. "You're not fine," Ron countered. "You look worse than Lupin after a full moon, no offense." Harry sighed, setting down his quill. "I just feel like time is running out. Voldemort's not sitting around waiting. He's looking for ways to counter what I can do, searching for more Horcrux hiding places. And you'll be no use against him if you collapse from exhaustion," Hermione pointed out sensibly. "Your body and mind need recovery time, especially after working with those Dementor constructs." Harry knew they were right, but the pressure felt overwhelming. Every day, the prophet reported more disappearances, more deaths. The war was intensifying, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his new ability might be the key to ending it, if only he could master it in time. A tapping at the common room window interrupted their conversation. A school owl hovered outside, a note tied to its leg. Harry let it in, taking the small scroll. "Tonight. My office. 8 p.m. Bring your cloak." It was signed simply with a D. "Dumbledore?" Ron asked, reading over Harry's shoulder. Harry nodded, suddenly alert despite his fatigue. "I think it's time." At 8 o'clock precisely, Harry arrived at Dumbledore's office, his invisibility cloak tucked inside his robes. The headmaster was waiting, along with Lupin and, surprisingly, Bill Weasley. "Ah, Harry," Dumbledore greeted him. "Punctual as always. I believe you know Bill Weasley, of course." "Good to see you, Harry," Bill said, shaking his hand. The eldest Weasley brother looked more rugged than ever, his long hair tied back and a new scar on his cheek that hadn't been there at Christmas. "Bill has been assisting me with certain aspects of our Horcrux hunt," Dumbledore explained. "His expertise as a cursebreaker has proven invaluable." Harry nodded, looking between the three men. "Are we going somewhere?" "Indeed we are," Dumbledore confirmed. "Tonight, we will put your unique ability to a practical test. I believe I have located another of Voldemort's Horcruxes, but it is protected by enchantments I cannot fully penetrate without alerting Voldemort to our activities." Harry's pulse quickened. "And you think Dementors could help? If they can sense fragments of soul as you've described, they might be able to confirm the Horcrux's presence without triggering the protective enchantments." "Where is it?" Harry asked. "In a location with a significant connection to Tom Riddle's past," Dumbledore replied. "A cave by the sea where he once terrorized fellow orphans during a childhood outing." Harry remembered seeing this memory in the pensieve during one of their lessons. "And you think he hid a Horcrux there?" "I am nearly certain of it," Dumbledore said gravely. "The question is whether we can locate and retrieve it without alerting Voldemort." "And that's where your Dementor friends come in," Bill added. "Dark detectors that won't trigger conventional magical traps." "What's the plan?" Harry asked, eager despite his exhaustion. "We will apparate to a cliff top near the cave," Dumbledore explained. "From there, you will summon a small number of Dementors, 3 should suffice. Under your direction, they will enter the cave ahead of us to locate the Horcrux while Bill assesses any curses or traps from a safe distance. Remus will accompany us as well," Dumbledore continued, nodding toward Lupin. "His expertise with dark creatures and his reliable Patronus provide an additional safety measure." It was a solid plan, but Harry felt a flicker of concern. "What if I can't summon the Dementors? What if they don't come?" "They will come," Dumbledore said with quiet confidence. "They are bound to you now, in ways even they may not fully understand." Harry nodded, trusting Dumbledore's judgment. "When do we leave?" "Immediately," the headmaster replied, drawing his wand. "Please don your cloak until we are beyond the castle grounds." Harry swung the invisibility cloak around his shoulders, vanishing from view. The four wizards made their way through the quiet castle and across the darkened grounds. Once past the gates, Dumbledore extended his arm. "Hold tight, Harry," he instructed. "We will travel together." Harry gripped Dumbledore's forearm, and with a twisting sensation, they disappeared. They reappeared on a high cliff overlooking a dark, choppy sea. Wind whipped around them, carrying salt spray that stung Harry's eyes. Lupin and Bill appeared seconds later with similar cracks of apparition. "We're here," Dumbledore said, his voice barely audible over the crashing waves below. "The cave entrance lies at the base of the cliff, only accessible by swimming." Harry stared down at the churning water, then back at Dumbledore. "You want the Dementors to scout ahead?" Dumbledore nodded. "They can traverse such obstacles more easily than we can." Harry removed his invisibility cloak, stowing it safely in an inner pocket of his robes. Then he closed his eyes, focusing on the mental connection he had established with the Dementors months ago in the Forbidden Forest. "I need you," he projected, picturing the creatures clearly in his mind. "Three of you. Come to me now." For a long moment, nothing happened. The wind continued to howl, the waves continued to crash. Harry concentrated harder, reaching out with his mind, searching for that cold tendril of awareness he had felt before. Then he felt it, the drop in temperature that had nothing to do with the winter night. The others felt it too. Lupin immediately drew his wand, ready to cast a Patronus if needed. Three dark shapes materialized from the darkness, gliding across the sea toward the cliff. They rose up, hooded faces turned toward Harry, waiting. "They came," Bill whispered, a hint of awe in his voice despite his professional detachment. Harry stepped forward, focusing on the Dementors. He felt their hunger, their curiosity, their strange recognition of him. "There's a cave below," he told them, projecting mental images alongside his words. "We need to find something hidden inside, an object containing a fragment of soul, like him." He projected an image of Voldemort as he had seen him in the graveyard, focusing on the sense of wrongness, of a soul fractured. The Dementors seemed to understand. They hovered, waiting for specific instructions. "Go into the cave," Harry continued. "Find the soul fragment. Do not disturb anything else. Return and show me what you find." The Dementors turned as one and descended toward the water. They glided just above the surface, moving with purpose toward the cliff base. "Remarkable," Dumbledore murmured. "Truly remarkable, Harry." "Now we wait," Lupin said, casting a warming charm to counter the Dementors' lingering chill. The wait was tense. Harry kept his mind open, trying to maintain his connection with the Dementors as they moved farther away. He caught flashes of what they were experiencing: darkness, water, stone, magic. The impressions were fragmented, alien, difficult to interpret. "They found an entrance," he reported, eyes still closed in concentration. "There's blood magic. A sacrifice required to enter." Bill nodded. "Classic protection. Blood as payment. They've passed through somehow," Harry continued. "There's a lake, a boat, and something in the center. An island." Dumbledore and Lupin exchanged meaningful glances. "The Horcrux would be on the island," Dumbledore said quietly. "Well protected, I imagine." Harry's face contorted in concentration. "They sense it. The soul fragment. It's calling to them. But there's something else." His eyes snapped open. "Bodies. In the water. Dead but not dead." "Inferi," Bill said grimly. "He's using Inferi as guards." "The Dementors don't care about them," Harry said, still receiving impressions. "The dead have no souls to feed on, no happiness to consume." This was an advantage they hadn't anticipated. Dementors could bypass Inferi completely, being neither alive nor truly physical in the conventional sense. "They've reached the island," Harry reported, his voice becoming strained with the effort of maintaining the connection. There's a basin, filled with liquid, and beneath it. He gasped. They sense it. The fragment. It's there. Can they retrieve it? Dumbledore asked intently. Harry shook his head. The liquid, it's protected by powerful magic. They can't touch it. We'll need to go in ourselves, Bill concluded. But now we know exactly where to look and what obstacles we face. Call them back, Harry, Dumbledore instructed. They've done what we needed. Harry sent the mental command, and within minutes, the three Dementors reappeared, gliding up over the cliff edge to hover before them. Harry felt their excitement, their hunger for the broken soul they had sensed. Thank you, he told them, both aloud and mentally. Wait here. We may need you again. The Dementors drew back, taking positions around the perimeter of the cliff top like dark sentinels. Lupin kept his wand ready, clearly uncomfortable with their presence despite their apparent obedience. Now, Dumbledore said, we proceed with caution. The knowledge your Dementors have provided gives us a significant advantage, but Tom's protections will still be formidable. I think I should go alone with Harry, Bill suggested. Too many people will make us vulnerable in tight spaces, especially with Inferi present. I must insist on accompanying you, Dumbledore countered firmly. The Horcrux will have additional protections that may require my specific knowledge of Tom's methods. And I'm staying with Harry, Lupin added. The Dementors are following his commands for now, but if anything changes. Harry appreciated their concern, but felt a surge of impatience. We're wasting time arguing. Let's all go, but carefully. The Dementors showed me the way in. With that decided, they began the treacherous descent to the cave entrance. Dumbledore created hand and footholds in the cliff face with precise wand movements, allowing them to climb down rather than swim in the frigid water below. The cave mouth was narrow and jagged, opening into a dark tunnel that seemed to lead deep into the cliff. They lit their wands, revealing glistening stone walls dripping with seawater. The entrance requiring blood is ahead, Harry said, remembering the Dementors' impressions. A stone wall that looks solid but isn't. Sure enough, they soon reached what appeared to be a dead end. Dumbledore examined it closely, running his injured hand over the wet stone. Yes, we must pay to enter, he confirmed. A rather primitive bit of magic, but effective. Before anyone could stop him, Dumbledore drew a silver knife from his robes and made a quick cut across his palm. He pressed his bleeding hand to the stone, which immediately began to crumble away, revealing a larger cavern beyond. Albus! Lupin protested. One of us could have, my blood has the least value here, Dumbledore said simply, healing the cut with a touch of his wand. Shall we proceed? They entered the vast cavern the Dementors had shown Harry. A great black lake stretched before them, its surface still as glass. In its center, a greenish glow emanated from a small island. The boat is hidden, Harry said, remembering. There, along the edge. He pointed to what looked like an ordinary stretch of shoreline. Bill approached cautiously, casting detection spells. Clever concealment charm, he muttered. Triggered by touch, not magic. He reached out, and his hand seemed to catch on something invisible. A moment later, a ghostly green chain appeared, leading into the water. With Dumbledore's help, Bill pulled the chain, drawing a small boat to the surface. It was barely large enough for two people. It's designed to carry only one wizard, Dumbledore observed. But I suspect it measures magical power, not physical bodies. Harry, you and I shall cross first. Remus and Bill will follow once we've reached the island. Harry nodded, stepping carefully into the boat after Dumbledore. It sank alarmingly lower in the water but remained afloat. As they glided silently across the black lake, Harry could see pale faces and hands beneath the surface, the Inferi, waiting to attack anyone who disturbed the water. Do not touch the water, Harry, Dumbledore warned unnecessarily. Not even a finger. They reached the island without incident. It was small, just a flat expanse of rock barely 10 feet across. In its center stood a pedestal with a stone basin filled with glowing green liquid. Dumbledore approached it cautiously, casting several spells over the basin. "As I suspected," he said quietly. "The liquid cannot be penetrated by hand, vanished, transfigured, or otherwise magically affected. It must be drunk." "Drunk?" Harry repeated, horrified. "But it's obviously poison." "Not necessarily poison," Dumbledore corrected. "But something designed to incapacitate, to prevent access to the Horcrux beneath." "I will drink it." "No." Harry protested. "I'll do it." Dumbledore's expression hardened. "This is not open for discussion, Harry. Your ability with the Dementors is too valuable to risk. If I am incapacitated, you must get the Horcrux and escape, even if you must leave me behind." Before Harry could argue further, Dumbledore conjured a crystal goblet and dipped it into the potion. "Whatever happens," he instructed, "you must ensure that I continue drinking until the basin is empty. Do you understand?" Reluctantly, Harry nodded. "Good." With that, Dumbledore raised the goblet to his lips and drank. What followed was the most horrific experience of Harry's young life. As Dumbledore drank goblet after goblet of the potion, he began to suffer. First came pain, then desperate thirst, and finally hallucinations. He begged Harry to stop, pleaded for death, cried out for forgiveness for unnamed sins. But Harry, heartbreaking, forced him to continue as instructed. When the last of the potion was gone, Dumbledore collapsed, gasping for water. Harry could see something gleaming at the bottom of the now empty basin, a golden locket. He grabbed it quickly, shoving it into his pocket, then turned to help Dumbledore. The headmaster was desperately thirsty, but Harry knew better than to touch the lake water. "Aguamenti," he cast, but the water vanished before Dumbledore could drink it. In desperation, Harry called out mentally to the Dementors waiting above. "I need water. Real water. Bring it to the cave entrance." He didn't know if they understood or even heard him from this distance. But he had to try something. "Professor," he said urgently to Dumbledore, who was slipping in and out of consciousness, "we need to get back to the boat." With great effort, he half-carried, half-dragged Dumbledore back to the small craft. As they pushed off toward the shore, Harry saw movement beneath the water. The Inferi were stirring, perhaps sensing Dumbledore's vulnerability. "Stay back," Harry warned, though he doubted the creatures could understand. He raised his wand, ready to cast fire, the one thing Inferi feared, if necessary. To his relief, they reached the opposite shore without the Inferi attacking. Lupin and Bill were waiting anxiously. "The Horcrux?" Bill asked immediately. "Got it," Harry confirmed, patting his pocket. "But Professor Dumbledore, the potion." "We need to get him back to Hogwarts," Lupin said, taking in Dumbledore's condition with alarm. "Immediately." They carried Dumbledore through the tunnel to the cave entrance. To Harry's astonishment, the three Dementors were waiting just inside, hovering over what appeared to be a small pool of fresh water that had formed from a crack in the ceiling. They understood, Harry realized, deeply moved by this unexpected display of, not compassion, surely, but perhaps a form of loyalty. They let Dumbledore drink the fresh water, which seemed to revive him somewhat, though he remained weak. With the Dementors gliding ahead as silent sentinels, they made their way back up the cliff face, Dumbledore supported between Lupin and Bill. Once at the top, Harry turned to the Dementors. "Thank you," he said simply. "You can return to the mountains now. I'll call if I need you again." The Dementors lingered for a moment, their faceless hoods turned toward the pocket containing the Horcrux, as if drawn to the soul fragment within. Then, with a silent swirl of tattered cloaks, they disappeared into the night. "Let's get back to Hogwarts," Bill said, supporting Dumbledore's weight. "We've got what we came for." As they prepared to apparate, Harry felt the weight of the locket in his pocket. Thanks to the Dementors, they had retrieved a Horcrux with minimal risk, potentially without Voldemort even knowing they'd been there. It was the first major victory in what had felt like an endless string of losses. And it was just the beginning. The journey back to Hogwarts was a blur. They apparat to Hogsmeade, where Madame Rosmerta provided a private room for Dumbledore to rest briefly before they continued to the castle. By the time they reached the hospital wing, Dumbledore was more lucid, though still weakened by the potion's effects. "The Horcrux," he insisted, reaching for Harry. "Let me see it." Harry pulled the heavy gold locket from his pocket. It was ornate and ancient-looking, with a serpentine S inlaid on the front. Dumbledore took it with trembling fingers, examining it closely. His expression changed from triumph to confusion. "Open it, Harry," he said quietly. Harry found the clasp and clicked it open. Inside was not a fragment of soul, but a folded piece of parchment. Heart sinking, he removed and unfolded it. "To the Dark Lord, I know I will be dead long before you read this, but I want you to know it was I who discovered your secret. I have stolen the real Horcrux and intend to destroy it as soon as I can. I face death in the hope that when you meet your match, you will be mortal once more." "Rab, it's a fake," Harry said, disbelief and disappointment washing over him. "All that, for nothing." "Not for nothing," Dumbledore corrected weakly from his hospital bed. "We have confirmed my theory about the Horcruxes, tested your ability with the Dementors, and gained valuable intelligence about Voldemort's protections." "But who is Rab?" Harry demanded. "And where's the real Horcrux?" "Questions for another time," Dumbledore said, his energy clearly fading. "You should rest, Harry. We all should." Madame Pomfrey appeared, shooing them away from Dumbledore's bedside. "The headmaster needs sleep, not interrogation. Out, all of you." Harry, Lupin, and Bill retreated to the corridor outside the hospital wing. Bill checked his watch and grimaced. "I need to report to Gringotts in the morning," he said. "I'd better get back." "Tell the others only what they need to know," Lupin instructed. "The fewer people who know about Harry's ability with the Dementors, the better." Bill nodded, clasping Harry's shoulder. "You did well tonight. Whatever that locket is, we'll figure it out." After Bill left, Lupin escorted Harry back to Gryffindor Tower. "Get some sleep," he advised. "We can discuss what happened tomorrow." But sleep eluded Harry. His mind raced with the events of the night, the cave, the potion, Dumbledore's suffering, the fake Horcrux. And the Dementors, they had obeyed him flawlessly, even bringing water when he needed it most. He pulled out the Marauder's map, activating it with a whispered, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." His eyes scanned the familiar parchment, looking for any unusual activity in the castle. A name caught his attention, Draco Malfoy, pacing in the room of requirement. What was he doing there at 3 in the morning? Harry had been watching Malfoy all year, convinced he was up to something for Voldemort. Now, with his suspicions about Malfoy's mysterious task refreshed, Harry made a decision. He would confront Malfoy directly. Grabbing his invisibility cloak, Harry slipped out of the dormitory and through the portrait hole. The castle was silent as he made his way to the 7th floor, checking the map occasionally to avoid Filch and the patrolling professors. When he reached the corridor outside the room of requirement, Harry paused. Malfoy was still inside. Harry paced 3 times, thinking, I need to see what Draco Malfoy is doing. I need to enter the same room Draco Malfoy is using. A door appeared in the wall. Harry drew his wand, took a deep breath, and entered. The room was cavernous, filled with mountains of discarded objects, broken furniture, forbidden items, forgotten treasures. In the distance, Harry could hear movement. He followed the sound, keeping his footsteps silent. He found Malfoy standing before a large cabinet, his face gaunt and stressed in the wand light. The Slytherin was muttering incantations, waving his wand in complex patterns over the cabinet's surface. Harry stepped forward, removing his invisibility cloak. What are you doing, Malfoy? Draco spun around, his face contorting with shock and fear. Potter. His wand came up instinctively. How did you get in here? Doesn't matter, Harry said, his own wand trained on Malfoy. What's the cabinet for? What are you planning? Malfoy's face twisted into a sneer, but Harry could see the fear beneath it. You have no idea what's happening, Potter. No idea at all. Then tell me, Harry challenged. Is this your task from Voldemort? To fix this cabinet? Malfoy flinched at Voldemort's name. Don't say his name, he hissed. You don't understand. I have to do this. He'll kill my family if I don't. Whatever it is, Dumbledore can help you, Harry insisted. You don't have to do this alone. Malfoy laughed bitterly. Dumbledore? The man I'm supposed to. He stopped, horror crossing his face as he realized what he'd almost revealed. Harry's blood ran cold. You're supposed to what, Malfoy? Kill him? Malfoy's silence was answer enough. His wand hand trembled. That's insane, Harry said, taking a step forward. You're not a killer, Malfoy. You don't know what I am, Malfoy snarled, but there was desperation in his voice. You don't know what I've become. I know you're scared, Harry countered. I know you're being forced to do this. But there are options, Draco. The Order can protect your family. For a moment, Malfoy seemed to waver, a flash of hope crossing his features before hardening into resolve. It's too late, he said flatly. They're already inside the castle. What? Harry didn't understand. Who's inside? Death Eaters, Malfoy whispered, his face ghostly pale. The cabinet is a vanishing cabinet. It's connected to one in Borgin and Berks. A passage into Hogwarts that bypasses all the defenses. Harry felt sick. You're letting Death Eaters into the school. With children inside? I don't have a choice. Malfoy shouted, his composure finally cracking. He'll torture them, my mother, my father. He'll kill them slowly while I watch. Harry's mind raced. If Death Eaters were coming tonight, Dumbledore was vulnerable in the hospital wing. The students were asleep, defenseless. He needed to alert the Order immediately. When? Harry demanded. When are they coming through? Malfoy's eyes darted to the cabinet. Soon. Tonight. The cabinet's repaired. I was just finishing the enchantments. Listen to me, Harry said urgently. This isn't you, Malfoy. You don't want the blood of your classmates on your hands. Help me stop this, and I swear the Order will protect your family. Doubt flickered across Malfoy's face. How? The Dark Lord has my manor under watch. My mother can't leave without being followed. We have ways, Harry assured him, thinking of the Order's safe houses. But you need to make a choice now, Malfoy. Right now. The second stretched into an eternity as Malfoy wrestled with his decision. Finally, his shoulders slumped. What do you need me to do? He asked quietly. Relief flooded Harry. First, sabotage the cabinet again. Make it unsafe for passage. Then come with me to warn the professors. Malfoy nodded, turning back to the cabinet. With a complexity of wand work that impressed even Harry, he began altering the enchantments, inserting deliberate flaws into the magical connections. This will destabilize the passage, he explained as he worked. Anyone trying to come through will be splinched severely, maybe fatally. When he finished, they hurried from the room of requirement. Harry consulted the Marauders' map, looking for their closest ally. McGonagall's in her office, he said. We'll go to her first. As they raced through the corridors, Harry explained what had happened at the cave, omitting any mention of Horcruxes but emphasizing Dumbledore's weakened state. If they were planning to attack tonight, with Dumbledore vulnerable. Harry didn't need to finish the thought. That was the plan, Malfoy confirmed grimly. They knew he'd been leaving the castle regularly. They were waiting for an opportunity. They reached McGonagall's office and pounded on the door. The Transfiguration professor answered in a tartan dressing gown, her hair in a night braid. Potter. Malfoy. What is the meaning of this? Death Eaters, Harry said without preamble. They were planning to enter the castle tonight through a vanishing cabinet. Malfoy sabotaged it, but we need to alert the Order and secure the castle. To her credit, McGonagall absorbed this information instantly, her expression shifting from annoyance to urgent focus. Inside, both of you. Quickly. Once in her office, McGonagall used the Fleur to contact other Order members while Harry explained the situation in greater detail. Malfoy, looking increasingly terrified as the reality of his betrayal of Voldemort sank in, added details about which Death Eaters had been assigned to the mission. Bellatrix Lestrange, Fenrir Greyback, the Carrows, he listed. 6 or 7 in total. Greyback? McGonagall's face paled. A werewolf, in a school full of children. That was the point, Malfoy said bitterly. Maximum casualties, maximum terror. Within 30 minutes, the castle was quietly being secured. Order members arrived discreetly through McGonagall's Fleur, spreading out to protect strategic points. Snape, his face unreadable as always, was assigned to guard Dumbledore in the hospital wing. What about me? Malfoy asked, his voice small. When the Dark Lord discovers what I've done. You'll come with me, said a quiet voice from the doorway. Lupin had returned with Tonks. We have a safe house prepared. Your mother can join you there. My father is in Azkaban, Malfoy pointed out. We'll address that challenge when we can, Lupin said gently. One step at a time. As the night progressed and dawn approached without any Death Eater attack, the tension began to ease. Malfoy's sabotage of the cabinet had worked. Harry, exhausted from the cave expedition and the night's drama, finally allowed himself to be escorted back to Gryffindor Tower. Get some rest, Tonks advised. You've earned it. But as Harry climbed into bed, his mind returned to the locket, the fake Horcrux. R.A.B. Who was this person who had discovered Voldemort's secret and stolen the real Horcrux? Were they successful in destroying it, or was it still out there somewhere? And what of the real Horcruxes? How many remained? How would they find them? As sleep finally claimed him, Harry's last conscious thought was of the Dementors, how they had sensed the soul fragment, how they had obeyed his commands, how they had even brought water when Dumbledore needed it. In Creatures of Despair, he had found an unexpected ally. In darkness, a ray of hope. The war was far from over. But for the first time, Harry felt they might have a real chance of winning. Chapter 2, The Gathering. The morning after the cave expedition, Harry woke to sunlight streaming through the dormitory windows and the sounds of his roommates getting ready for the day. His body felt heavy with exhaustion, but his mind raced with everything that had happened, the cave, the fake Horcrux, Malfoy's defection. You look like hell, Ron observed, pulling on his robes. Hermione's waiting in the common room. She's about to explode with curiosity. Harry dragged himself out of bed. Did they tell everyone what happened last night? No one's saying anything official, but the whole castle knows something went down. There are Order members everywhere, and Malfoy's gone missing. Not missing, Harry corrected, lowering his voice. In protective custody. I'll explain everything, but not here. They found Hermione pacing by the fireplace, her hair even bushier than usual from running her hands through it anxiously. Finally, she exclaimed when she saw them. Harry, there are rumors flying everywhere. Some first years are saying Death Eaters breached the castle. Not quite, Harry said. Let's find somewhere private. They settled on the room of requirement, which transformed into a cozy study space with comfortable chairs and soundproof walls. Harry told them everything, the cave, the potion Dumbledore drank, the fake Horcrux, and finally, his confrontation with Malfoy. R.A.B., Hermione mused, examining the note from the locket. I'll start researching possible identities right away. Bloody hell, Ron shook his head, still processing Malfoy's planned Death Eater invasion. I never thought Malfoy would actually switch sides. He didn't have much choice, Harry pointed out. It was either that or become a murderer. But what matters now is that Voldemort will know his plan failed, and he'll be looking for someone to blame. You don't think Malfoy is still in danger? Even in hiding? Hermione asked. Everyone's in danger, Harry said grimly. But the Order will protect him and his mother as best they can. What about the Dementors? Ron asked, lowering his voice despite their privacy. You said they helped find the Horcrux. Well, what they thought was the Horcrux. That's the big breakthrough, Harry nodded. They can sense soul fragments. If we can use that to track down the real Horcruxes. It changes everything, Hermione finished. We need to find out who RAB is and locate the real Locket Horcrux. If the Dementors can help with that, we could actually win this war. A knock at the room's door interrupted them. When Harry opened it, he found Professor McGonagall looking even more serious than usual. Potter, the headmaster requests your presence in his office. Immediately. Harry glanced back at his friends. I'll catch up with you later. We'll start on RAB, Hermione promised. Harry followed McGonagall through the corridors, noticing the increased presence of Order members patrolling discreetly. Students whispered as they passed, clearly sensing the heightened security. Is Professor Dumbledore all right? Harry asked as they walked. He is recovering, McGonagall said tersely. Madame Pomfrey has done what she can, but that potion. She shook her head disapprovingly. Most unpleasant business. They reached the gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office. Acid pops, McGonagall pronounced, and the statue leapt aside. Thank you, Minerva, came Dumbledore's voice as Harry entered. That will be all. Dumbledore sat behind his desk, looking friendlier than Harry had ever seen him. His blackened hand rested on a stack of parchments, and his normally bright eyes were shadowed with fatigue. Sir, you should be resting, Harry said immediately. There will be time for rest later, Dumbledore said with a weak smile. Please, sit down, Harry. We have much to discuss and, I fear, little time to do so. Harry took the chair across from Dumbledore, noting with concern how the headmaster's hand trembled slightly as he reached for a cup of tea. First, I must commend you on your quick thinking with young Mr. Malfoy, Dumbledore began. You showed remarkable compassion and foresight. Lives were undoubtedly saved by your actions. It wasn't just me, Harry said. Malfoy made the choice to turn away from Voldemort. Indeed, and a brave choice it was. Now, to more pressing matters. Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. The fake Horcrux represents both a setback and an opportunity. Someone, this RAB, discovered Voldemort's secret before us. If they successfully destroyed the real Horcrux, our task is lightened. If not, we must find it. Hermione's already researching possible identities for RAB, Harry said. Excellent. Miss Granger's research skills will be invaluable. But I wish to focus on another aspect of our mission, your remarkable ability with the Dementors. Harry shifted uncomfortably. I'm still not sure why they obey me. Whether we fully understand the mechanism or not, this ability represents our greatest advantage. Dumbledore's voice strengthened with conviction. The Dementors' ability to sense soul fragments, to sense Horcruxes, could be the key to locating them all. How do we proceed? Harry asked. Carefully, Dumbledore cautioned. Voldemort will soon learn, if he hasn't already, that his Dementors responded to your commands in Hogsmeade. He will be disturbed by this development. That was an understatement, Harry thought. Voldemort would be furious. I suggest a two-pronged approach, Dumbledore continued. First, continue your training with the Dementors, focusing particularly on fine control and distance commands. Second, we must identify which Horcruxes remain and their possible locations. The diary is destroyed, Harry said, counting on his fingers. The ring you found is destroyed. The locket may or may not be destroyed by this RAB person. How many more are there? Based on my research into Tom Riddle's obsession with magical significance, I believe he intended to split his soul into 7 parts, 6 Horcruxes, with the 7th piece remaining in his body. 6. Harry felt slightly sick. So even if the locket is destroyed, we still have 3 more to find. I have suspicions about what some of them might be, Dumbledore said. Artifacts belonging to the Hogwarts founders would appeal to Tom's sense of grandeur. We know the locket belonged to Salazar Slytherin. Perhaps Hufflepuff's cup, or something of Ravenclaw's or Gryffindor's. And where would he hide them? Places of significance to him. The cave was one such location. I believe he may have hidden another at Hogwarts itself. Harry's eyebrows shot up. Here. Under your nose. Tom always believed himself cleverer than anyone else, Dumbledore said with a hint of his usual twinkle. The arrogance to hide a piece of his soul in the one place where I might find it would appeal to him greatly. But where in the castle? Harry asked, mind racing through possibilities. That, I'm afraid, remains unclear. But perhaps your Dementor allies could help us search. Harry frowned. I can't exactly bring Dementors into the school, sir. The students would panic. No, but you might direct them to search the grounds, the forest, even Hogsmeade. Start with the perimeter and work inward. It was a reasonable approach, but Harry had concerns. The Ministry won't like it if I'm commanding their Dementors. Dumbledore's expression hardened slightly. The Ministry lost control of the Dementors long ago. They serve Voldemort now, or they did, until you demonstrated a more compelling authority. Minister Scrimgeour may protest, but even he cannot argue with results if we locate a Horcrux. When do I start? Tonight, Dumbledore said decisively. Professor Lupin will accompany you to the edge of the Forbidden Forest. From there, summon a small group of Dementors, no more than 5 to begin with. The fewer who know about this operation, the better. Harry nodded, determination filling him. This was it, a real plan to defeat Voldemort, not just reacting to attacks or searching blindly for Horcruxes. One more thing, Harry, Dumbledore added, his voice gentler now. Working closely with Dementors carries risks beyond the obvious. Their aura of despair affects even those they obey. Be vigilant against dark thoughts and emotions. Share your burden with friends you trust. I will, Harry promised. As he left Dumbledore's office, Harry felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, but alongside it, a sense of purpose stronger than anything he'd felt before. Voldemort had taken so much from him, his parents, Sirius, any chance at a normal life. Now, finally, Harry had a weapon the Dark Lord never expected. That evening, Harry met Lupin at the groundskeeper's hut. Hagrid was away on a mission for the Order, so they had privacy as they reviewed their plan. Dumbledore explained what we're attempting, Lupin said, looking anxious in the fading twilight. I must say, Harry, this goes against every instinct I have regarding dark creatures. I understand, Harry said. I felt the same at first. But they respond to me, Remus. They actually helped Dumbledore in the cave. I saw it myself, Lupin acknowledged. Still, maintain constant vigilance. Dementors are not pets or tools, they're ancient, dangerous beings with their own nature. They walked to the edge of the Forbidden Forest, far from any student paths but still within sight of the castle. The night was clear and cold, stars beginning to appear overhead. This should be far enough, Harry decided, closing his eyes to focus. He reached out with his mind, searching for the cold thread of connection he'd established with the mountain-dwelling Dementors. I need you, he projected. 5 of you. Come to me now. The night air grew suddenly colder. Frost formed on the nearby grass, and Harry's breath fogged before him. Lupin tensed, wand ready, as dark shapes materialized from the shadows between trees. 5 Dementors glided forward, forming a semicircle around Harry. He felt their hunger, their curiosity, but also a strange sense of anticipation. They remembered him. "Hello again," Harry said, finding it oddly natural to address them directly. "I need your help searching for objects like the one in the cave, fragments of a broken soul." The Dementors drifted slightly closer, their faceless hoods oriented toward him with unnerving attention. "We're looking for these fragments around Hogwarts," Harry continued, projecting mental images alongside his words: the castle, the grounds, the forest. "They might be hidden, protected by magic. Can you sense any nearby?" The Dementors communicated among themselves, a silent exchange Harry couldn't fully interpret but could sense happening. Then, one drifted slightly forward, projecting an impression back at Harry. The image was indistinct, but Harry recognized the emotional signature, the same wrongness he'd felt from the cave's basin, but fainter, more distant. It was somewhere in the castle itself. "You sense one?" Harry asked eagerly. "Inside Hogwarts?" The Dementors had tilted in what might have been a nod. Another Dementor moved forward, projecting a different image, this one of the forest depths, with the same sense of wrongness. 2. Harry looked at Lupin, excitement building. They sensed 2 Horcruxes, one in the castle, one in the forest. Lupin's expression was a mix of wonder and caution. "Ask for more detail. Can they pinpoint the locations?" Harry turned back to the Dementors. "I need to know exactly where these soul fragments are. Can you lead us to them?" The first Dementor projected another image, a castle corridor Harry recognized as being on the 7th floor, near where the room of requirement was located. The second Dementor's image was harder to interpret, a clearing deep in the forest, near a cluster of massive spiderwebs. "Aragog's lair," Harry murmured, remembering his second-year encounter with the Acromantula colony. "Or near it, anyway." "The 7th floor makes sense," Lupin said thoughtfully. "If Voldemort hid a Horcrux at Hogwarts, he'd want it somewhere significant but accessible to him. That corridor contains the Room of Requirement, a perfect hiding place." "But I've been in the Room of Requirement loads of times this year," Harry pointed out. "I never sensed anything like a Horcrux." "The room becomes whatever the seeker needs," Lupin reminded him. "You weren't looking for a Horcrux, so it didn't reveal one to you." Harry turned back to the Dementors. "I need you to search the castle perimeter, focusing on that 7th floor corridor. Don't enter the castle yet, just confirm what you sense." The Dementors drifted away, moving with eerie silence around the castle's outer walls, occasionally pausing as if testing the air. Harry kept his mind open, trying to maintain his connection with them as they searched. "This is remarkable, Harry," Lupin said quietly. "Truly unprecedented magic." "It doesn't feel like magic," Harry admitted. "Not like casting spells. It's more like, they recognize something in me, and they choose to follow." "That may be the most remarkable part," Lupin observed. "Not that you can command them, but that they willingly obey." The Dementors returned after completing their circuit of the castle. They grouped around Harry again, and the leader projected a clearer image, the 7th floor corridor with a specific section of wall highlighted. "The Room of Requirement's entrance." "You're sure?" Harry asked. "The soul fragment is there, behind that wall." The Dementors had dipped in confirmation. The emotional signature it projected was unmistakable, the same wrongness, the same broken feeling as the cave, but distinct somehow. Different. "We need to search the Room of Requirement," Harry told Lupin. "But not tonight. We'll need Dumbledore for that." "And the forest?" Lupin prompted. Harry turned to the second Dementor. "Can you lead us to the soul fragment in the forest?" Instead of projecting an image, the Dementor simply turned and began gliding deeper among the trees, clearly expecting them to follow. Harry looked at Lupin questioningly. "I don't think we should go hunting in the forest at night without reinforcements," Lupin said firmly. "The Acromantula colony is dangerous, not to mention the other creatures that roam these woods after dark." "You're right," Harry agreed reluctantly. He called to the waiting Dementor, "Not tonight. We'll return tomorrow with more help." The Dementor drifted back, rejoining the others. Harry felt their restlessness, their eagerness to hunt the soul fragments they sensed. "You've done well," he told them. "Return to the mountains for now. I'll call you again tomorrow." The Dementors lingered for a moment, their empty hoods fixed on Harry as if studying him. Then, one by one, they glided away into the darkness, leaving behind only the lingering chill in the air. "We should report to Dumbledore immediately," Lupin said as they hurried back toward the castle. "If they're right about the Horcruxes, this is a tremendous breakthrough." Harry nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. 2 Horcruxes, practically in their backyard. If they could locate and destroy these, plus confirm whether RAB had destroyed the locket, they'd be halfway to making Voldemort mortal again. For the first time since Sirius's death, Harry felt something dangerously close to hope. Dumbledore called an emergency order meeting the next morning. They gathered in his office, McGonagall, Snape, Lupin, Moody, Kingsley, Tonks, and Bill Weasley, who had been called back from Gringotts for his expertise in curse-breaking. "Harry has made a significant discovery," Dumbledore announced once Snape had secured the room against eavesdropping. "The Dementors have sensed 2 of Voldemort's Horcruxes, one here in the castle, and one in the Forbidden Forest." Stunned silence followed this announcement, broken by Moody's gruff voice. "Horcruxes? Plural. Just how far did Riddle go?" "We believe he created 6, Dumbledore replied gravely. 2 have been destroyed. A third may have been destroyed by an unknown ally. With these 2 Harry has located, we may be close to rendering Voldemort mortal once more." "And you trust the Dementors?" Snape asked silkily. "Creatures of darkness, historically aligned with the Dark Lord. I trust Harry's connection with them," Dumbledore said simply. "And their ability to sense fragments of soul." Harry explained what the Dementors had shown him, the room of requirement and the clearing near Aragog's lair. Bill and Moody immediately began discussing approaches for securing and examining both locations. "We'll need containment equipment for the Horcruxes," Bill said. "They can't be touched directly, they fight back, influence the holder." "Alastair and Kingsley will secure the forest location," Dumbledore decided. "Harry, Minerva, and I will investigate the room of requirement. Severus, please prepare the necessary potions for neutralizing dark magic. Bill, we'll need your curse-breaking expertise for both retrievals." "What about the Dementors themselves?" Tonks asked. "Will they be part of the retrieval operations?" All eyes turned to Harry, who shifted uncomfortably under their gaze. "I think they should be," he said firmly. "They can confirm we found the right objects, and they might sense protective enchantments we can't detect." "Dementors inside Hogwarts," McGonagall muttered disapprovingly. "Never thought I'd see the day." "A necessary risk," Dumbledore countered. "Though we'll limit their presence to the specific locations, and only when students are in their dormitories." The meeting continued with detailed planning for both operations, scheduled to begin that evening after dinner. As they dispersed, Moody pulled Harry aside. "Potter, a word." Harry braced himself. Moody had been watching him intently throughout the meeting, his magical eye rarely blinking. "This Dementor business," Moody growled once they were alone. "It's not natural." "I know," Harry acknowledged. "Not saying it isn't useful," Moody clarified. "But power like that comes with a price. Always does. You feeling it yet?" Harry hesitated. He hadn't mentioned to anyone the nightmares that had plagued him since he began working with the Dementors, dreams filled with cold darkness and whispering voices. Or the moments of inexplicable melancholy that washed over him at odd hours. "A bit," he admitted. Moody nodded knowingly. "Thought so. Keep chocolate on you at all times. Cast a Patronus daily, even when Dementors aren't around. And for Merlin's sake, don't let your guard down around them, no matter how obedient they seem." "I won't," Harry promised. "I know what they are." "Do you?" Moody's magical eye fixed on him with uncomfortable intensity. "No one does, not really. Just be careful, boy. We need you intact. With that cryptic warning, Moody stumped away, leaving Harry to ponder the old Auror's words. That evening, Harry stood in the 7th-floor corridor with Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Bill Weasley. The castle was quiet, students confined to their common rooms by an early curfew allegedly implemented due to security concerns. We need to be precise about what we ask for, Dumbledore explained, gesturing to the blank wall where the Room of Requirements door would appear. Tom would have been specific when hiding his precious Horcrux. What about "I need the place where everything is hidden"? Harry suggested, remembering the vast cathedral-like space where he'd confronted Malfoy. That's what the room becomes when people need to hide things. Worth attempting, Dumbledore agreed. Proceed, Harry. Harry paced before the wall 3 times, concentrating on his request. A door materialized, ornate and ancient-looking. They entered cautiously, wands drawn. The room was exactly as Harry remembered, towering piles of discarded objects stretching as far as the eye could see. Centuries of hidden items created a maze-like landscape of furniture, books, clothing, and mysterious artifacts. Well, McGonagall said dryly, finding a specific object in here may prove challenging. This is where the Dementors will assist us, Dumbledore said. Harry, if you would summon them now. Harry closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind. I need you. 3 of you. Come to the castle entrance. They waited tensely for several minutes, until Dumbledore's wand vibrated slightly. They've arrived at the main doors. I've temporarily modified the castle's defenses to permit their entry, but only to this room. I'll go escort them, Harry said. He hurried through the castle's empty corridors, reaching the entrance hall where 3 Dementors waited outside the massive doors. With a wave of his hand, he beckoned them inside. Follow me, he instructed, trying to ignore the chill that spread through the hall with their entry. Stay close. Leading the Dementors through Hogwarts was surreal. These creatures, traditionally the stuff of wizarding nightmares, glided obediently behind Harry like macabre bodyguards. Their presence set the portraits muttering and exclaiming as they passed. When they returned to the Room of Requirement, Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Bill had created a small clear area among the junk piles, with containment equipment ready. Remarkable, Bill murmured, watching the Dementors enter. Despite his professional experience with dangerous magical artifacts, he couldn't hide his unease at their presence. Harry turned to the Dementors. We need to find the soul fragment hidden in this room. It could be inside any object here. Can you sense which direction? The Dementors spread out slightly, their hooded heads moving as if sniffing the air. After a moment, they converged on a particular direction, gliding purposefully between towering heaps of discarded items. The humans followed, lighting their wands as they ventured deeper into the cluttered maze. The Dementors moved with increasing purpose, eventually stopping before a tarnished cabinet atop which sat a discolored bust of an old warlock. And on the bust's head, a tiara, McGonagall breathed. Or rather, a diadem. Not just any diadem, Dumbledore said, his voice hushed with recognition. If I'm not mistaken, that is the lost diadem of Rowena Ravenclaw. The diadem was ancient and tarnished, but still beautiful, a delicate silver circlet with a blue sapphire at its center. The Dementors hovered around it, clearly agitated by the soul fragment they sensed within. No one touch it, Bill warned, casting detection spells from a safe distance. It's heavily cursed, multiple layers of protection, including what looks like a withering curse similar to what affected the headmaster's hand. Dumbledore nodded grimly. Tom was nothing if not consistent in his defenses. Bill worked methodically, countering curses and creating a safe containment field around the diadem. The process took nearly an hour, during which the Dementors remained fixated on the Horcrux, occasionally drifting closer before Harry silently commanded them to maintain distance. Finally, Bill levitated the diadem into a lead-lined box inscribed with protective runes. That should hold it until we can destroy it. Excellent work, Mr. Weasley, Dumbledore said, though his gaze remained on the Dementors. Harry, What are your guardians sensing now? Harry focused on the connection, trying to interpret the impressions flowing from the Dementors. They're satisfied, he said slowly. But also still hungry. They sense the fragment inside the box, but they can't reach it. Do they desire to consume it? Dumbledore asked with academic interest. Harry directed the question to the Dementors, receiving a complex emotional response. Yes and no, he translated. They're drawn to it because it's broken, unnatural. They want to correct it, somehow. Return it to the natural order. Fascinating, Dumbledore murmured. Dementors as agents of spiritual balance. That perspective doesn't appear in any text I've read. We can theorize later, McGonagall said practically. For now, we should secure the Horcrux and check on Alastor's progress in the forest. They made their way back through the room of hidden things, the Dementors gliding silently behind them. As they reached the door, Harry felt a sudden cold pulse of awareness from one of the Dementors. It had stopped, its hood turned toward a different pile of objects. Wait, Harry said, holding up a hand. I think they sense something else. He approached the Dementor. What is it? Another soul fragment? The Dementor projected an image, not of a Horcrux, but of a cabinet. The same vanishing cabinet Malfoy had been repairing. That's just the vanishing cabinet, Harry said, confused. There's no Horcrux there. But the Dementor insisted, projecting an impression of darkness, of a passage between places, of something fundamentally wrong with the fabric of reality. Harry relayed this to the others. Bill frowned thoughtfully. The cabinet itself isn't a Horcrux, but the Dementor might be sensing the magical tear in space it creates. If they're attuned to violations of natural law, a passage that bypasses normal magical protections would register as wrong. We should destroy it, Harry said decisively. Even with Malfoy gone, Voldemort might find another way to use it. Dumbledore nodded his agreement. A wise precaution. Bill, if you would. Bill aimed his wand at the cabinet and cast a complex curse-breaking spell that caused the wood to crack and splinter. A second spell reduced it to fine ash. That should do it, he said with satisfaction. One less security vulnerability to worry about. They left the room of requirement with their captured Horcrux, Harry instructing the Dementors to return to the entrance hall and wait. As they made their way down to Dumbledore's office, they received word via Patronus that Moody and Kingsley had successfully located something near Aragog's lair and were bringing it to the castle for examination. In Dumbledore's office, they placed the boxed diadem on the desk just as Moody and Kingsley arrived, looking grim and carrying a similar containment box. Found it buried under a tree, Moody reported. Acromantulas were guarding it, though they probably didn't know what they were guarding. Had to stun a few to get close enough. What is it? Harry asked eagerly. Kingsley opened their box cautiously, revealing a small golden cup with two finely wrought handles. A badger was engraved on its side. Helga Hufflepuff's cup, Dumbledore identified it immediately. Another Founder's relic, as I suspected. The Dementors were right about both locations, Harry said, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. This means we have 4 Horcruxes accounted for, the diary, the ring, the diadem, and the cup. Plus the locket, if RAB truly destroyed it, Dumbledore added. That would leave only one unidentified Horcrux. And then Voldemort himself, Moody growled. The reality of how close they were to their goal hung in the air between them. 4 Horcruxes found. Possibly only 2 more to go. We should destroy these immediately, Kingsley suggested, nodding toward the boxes. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. Though the method requires careful consideration. Basilisk venom worked for the diary, and Gryffindor's sword, impregnated with that venom, for the ring. We have the sword available to us. I'll do it, Harry volunteered, standing straighter. Dumbledore studied him for a moment, then nodded. The sword responds to worthy Gryffindors in times of need. It seems fitting. He retrieved the sword from its case behind the desk and handed it to Harry. The ruby-encrusted hilt felt warm in Harry's grip, the blade impossibly light for its size. "One at a time," Dumbledore cautioned. "And be prepared for resistance. Horcruxes do not die easily." Bill opened the diadems box first, carefully levitating the ancient headpiece onto the stone floor. Harry approached it, sword raised, but before he could strike, the diadem began to emit a thick, black smoke. The smoke writhed and twisted, forming into a face Harry recognized with a jolt, Sirius. "You failed me, Harry," the smoke Sirius accused, its voice eerily accurate. "You led me to my death with your stupidity, your arrogance." "It's not real," Moody barked. "Strike, Potter." But the smoke Sirius morphed into his parents, their expressions disappointed, accusing. "Our sacrifice was wasted on you," Smoke James said coldly. "You'll never be strong enough." "You're surrounded by death," Smoke Lily added. "Everyone who loves you dies." Harry's hands trembled on the sword hilt. Logically, he knew this was the Horcrux's defense mechanism, but the words cut deep into his insecurities. "Harry," Dumbledore's calm voice broke through, "remember who you are. Remember why we fight." With a yell of defiance, Harry brought the sword down on the diadem. There was a horrible screech as the blade cleaved through the ancient metal, and a burst of black smoke erupted from the broken tiara. Then silence. "Well done," Dumbledore said quietly. Without giving himself time to recover, Harry turned to the cup. As Bill levitated it from its box, Harry gripped the sword tightly, prepared for more psychological attacks. The cup didn't disappoint. As he approached, it began to vibrate, and water seeped from within it, spreading across the floor. The water rose up, forming images of his friends drowning, dying, calling his name in terror. "More will die because of you," whispered a voice from the water. "Everyone you love will suffer for your choices." But Harry was ready this time. "You're the one who's going to die," he told the cup firmly, and swung the sword. The blade connected with a clang, slicing the cup nearly in half. A scream echoed through the office, and another cloud of black smoke dissipated into nothing. Harry lowered the sword, suddenly exhausted. The emotional assault from the Horcruxes, combined with the lingering effects of working with the Dementors, left him feeling drained and slightly nauseated. "Are you all right, Potter?" McGonagall asked with unusual gentleness. "Fine," Harry managed, though his hands shook slightly. "Just tired." "Understandable," Dumbledore said. "You've accomplished more tonight than many wizards do in a lifetime. 2 Horcruxes destroyed in quick succession would tax anyone's strength." "What about the Dementors?" Harry remembered suddenly. "They're still waiting in the entrance hall." "I'll accompany you to dismiss them," Lupin volunteered. "You shouldn't be alone with them in your current state." Harry nodded gratefully, handing the sword back to Dumbledore. As he and Lupin headed toward the entrance hall, his mind was already turning to the next steps. 4 Horcruxes down. The locket still uncertain. 1 more unidentified Horcrux to find. They were so close. But Harry knew from bitter experience that Voldemort was most dangerous when cornered. The next morning, the Daily Prophet arrived with disturbing news. The headline screamed, "Mass breakout from Azkaban, Dementors abandon posts." "It started," Hermione said grimly, reading the article aloud to Harry and Ron at the breakfast table. "The Ministry is reporting that all Dementors guarding Azkaban disappeared last night, allowing dozens of Death Eaters to escape, including Lucius Malfoy." Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the February weather. "Voldemort must have ordered them to abandon Azkaban when he realized some were responding to me instead. Either that, or the Dementors themselves chose to leave," Ron suggested. "If they can sense you've got some kind of authority over them, maybe they're curious." The article went on to describe Ministry efforts to recapture the escaped Death Eaters and secure Azkaban with Aurors instead of Dementors. Minister Scrimgeour was quoted promising swift action against the Dementor threat. "They don't understand," Harry said quietly. "The Dementors aren't randomly attacking. They're choosing sides in a war. And it sounds like more of them are choosing your side, Harry, Hermione pointed out. That's both good and terrifying. The great hall buzzed with nervous conversation as more students received the news. Professor McGonagall stood to make an announcement, assuring everyone that Hogwarts remained secure and that additional protective measures were being implemented. Harry caught Dumbledore watching him from the staff table, his expression thoughtful. After breakfast, Harry wasn't surprised to receive another summons to the headmaster's office. The timing is remarkable, Dumbledore observed when Harry arrived. The very night we destroy 2 Horcruxes using information provided by Dementors under your command, the remaining Dementors abandon Azkaban entirely. Do you think Voldemort ordered them to leave? Harry asked. I think Voldemort attempted to order them to leave, Dumbledore corrected. But I suspect many left of their own accord, following some impulse we don't fully understand. He leaned forward. Harry, I believe the destruction of the Horcruxes may have reverberated through whatever connection exists between you, the Dementors, and Voldemort's soul fragments. The Dementors sensed a shift in the balance. So they're coming to me? Harry asked, alarmed. Perhaps, Dumbledore acknowledged. Which presents both opportunity and danger. Dementors en masse would be a formidable force against Voldemort's Death Eaters. However, the Ministry will view any gathering of Dementors as a threat to be eliminated. What should I do if more show up? Command them wisely, Dumbledore said simply. Direct them away from populated areas. Perhaps establish a gathering point in a remote location where they can await your instructions without causing panic. Like the mountains where I sent the first group. Exactly. But be prepared, Harry, the Ministry will soon come calling. Rufus Scrimgeour is not a fool. He will have heard reports from Hogsmeade about your unusual interaction with the Dementors. When dozens more suddenly abandon their posts, he will make the connection. Dumbledore's prediction proved accurate. That afternoon, Harry was summoned from Potions class to find Minister Scrimgeour himself waiting in McGonagall's office, along with 2 stern-looking Aurors. Mr. Potter, Scrimgeour began without preamble, I understand you've developed some method of communicating with Dementors. Harry glanced at McGonagall, who gave him a slight nod. I have a connection with them, Harry acknowledged carefully. I discovered it recently. A connection, Scrimgeour repeated. One that apparently supersedes the Ministry's long-standing arrangements with these creatures. I didn't try to undermine the Ministry, Harry said. It just happened. Nothing just happens with Dementors, Potter, Scrimgeour growled. They are classified as the darkest of creatures for good reason. Any wizard who can command them is dabbling in extremely dangerous magic. I'm not dabbling in anything, Harry retorted, irritation flaring. I'm using every advantage I can find to fight Voldemort. Scrimgeour flinched at the name but pressed on. Be that as it may, the Dementors are Ministry assets. Their sudden abandonment of Azkaban represents a security crisis of the highest order. Death Eaters are now free who should be imprisoned. So you want me to send them back to Azkaban? Harry asked incredulously. They weren't exactly doing a good job containing Death Eaters before. They were letting them escape to join Voldemort whenever they wanted. What I want, Scrimgeour said with barely contained frustration, is to understand the nature of your control over these creatures and ensure it doesn't represent a threat to wizarding security. Minister, McGonagall interjected, I can assure you that Mr. Potter's unusual ability is being closely monitored by Headmaster Dumbledore himself. Far from representing a threat, it has already proven valuable in our ongoing efforts against you-know-who. So Dumbledore is aware, Scrimgeour noted, his expression hardening. And yet neither of you saw fit to inform the Ministry that you had somehow subverted control of creatures vital to national security. With respect, Minister, Harry said, trying to keep his voice level, the Dementors stopped being vital to national security when they started working for Voldemort. I'm not subverting anything, I'm giving them a better alternative. An alternative that happens to place a weapon of mass terror in the hands of a 16-year-old boy, Scrimgeour shot back. Forgive me if the Ministry finds that concerning. Harry felt his temper rising but forced himself to remain calm. I understand your concerns, Minister. But I'm working with Dumbledore and the Order to use this ability responsibly. The Dementors are helping us track down Voldemort's secrets. And where are these Dementors now, Potter? Scrimgeour demanded. The ones that abandoned Azkaban? Dozens of soul-sucking creatures roaming free is hardly a demonstration of responsible use. They're in a remote location, harming no one, Harry said, though he wasn't entirely sure this was true. He'd only directly commanded the small groups he'd worked with, not the Azkaban deserters. Scrimgeour studied him for a long moment. I want your assurance, Potter, that you will cooperate with the Ministry on this matter. We need protocols, containment strategies, regular reporting on Dementor movements and activities. I'll cooperate as much as possible, Harry said carefully, as long as it doesn't interfere with our efforts against Voldemort. That's not good enough, Scrimgeour began, but McGonagall cut him off. Minister, may I remind you that Mr. Potter is a student under Hogwarts protection. Any arrangements regarding his abilities must be made through Headmaster Dumbledore, with appropriate safeguards for Mr. Potter's well-being and education. Scrimgeour looked like he wanted to argue but recognized the steel beneath McGonagall's polite tone. He rose, straightening his robes. Very well. I'll speak with Dumbledore directly. But make no mistake, Potter, the Ministry will not stand idly by while Dementors roam free, regardless of who claims to control them. After Scrimgeour and his Aurors departed, Harry slumped in his chair. That went well, he muttered sarcastically. Actually, it did, McGonagall surprised him by saying. The Minister came expecting to intimidate you into surrendering control of the Dementors to the Ministry. He's leaving with nothing but a promise to speak with Albus, which will prove equally unproductive. But he's right about one thing, Harry admitted. I don't know where all the Azkaban Dementors went. I only commanded the small groups I worked with directly. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. Then perhaps it's time to find out. The headmaster suggested you might try extending your reach this evening, from the astronomy tower. Its height and isolation make it suitable for such an attempt. Harry nodded, both eager and apprehensive. How many Dementors would respond if he called more broadly? And could he actually control them all? That night, Harry stood atop the astronomy tower with Lupin and Tonks flanking him. The February air was bitterly cold, stars sharp and clear in the black sky. Far below, the Hogwarts ground stretched into darkness, the Forbidden Forest a deeper shadow against the night. We've got Patronus coverage from here to Hogsmeade, Tonks reported. Order members are stationed at intervals, ready to contain any Dementors that get out of hand. I don't think they will, Harry said with more confidence than he felt. But better safe than sorry. How do you plan to call them? Lupin asked. The same way as before. Harry nodded. But broader, less directed. I want to see how many will respond to a general summons. He moved to the tower's edge, closing his eyes to focus. Instead of picturing specific Dementors or locations, he simply reached out with his mind, extending the cold thread of connection as far as he could sense. I call all Dementors who recognize my voice, he projected. Come to the mountain range north of Hogwarts. Gather there and await my arrival. He opened his eyes, half expecting to see swarms of dark shapes converging on the castle. But the night remained still and quiet. Did it work? Tonks asked uncertainly. I think so, Harry said. I told them to gather in the mountains, not to come here. We'll need to check if they've responded. How do you propose we do that? Lupin asked. Those mountains are extensive and difficult to search, especially at night. I can sense them when I'm closer, Harry explained. If we fly to the foothills, I should be able to tell if they've gathered. Lupin and Tonks exchanged looks. That's risky, Tonks said. Flying into a potential swarm of Dementors, even one supposedly under your command. We need to know, Harry insisted. If dozens of Dementors are roaming free, responding to neither the Ministry nor Voldemort, that's a crisis waiting to happen. After some discussion, they agreed on a compromise. Harry, Lupin, and Bill Weasley, who had stayed at Hogwarts to help with Horcrux research, would fly to the mountain range at dawn, with additional Order members positioned strategically in case of trouble. Harry slept fitfully that night, his dreams filled with floating cloaked figures and whispered voices just beyond comprehension. He woke before sunrise, feeling as though he hadn't rested at all. They departed at first light, flying on broomsticks through the crisp morning air. Harry led, with Lupin and Bill flanking him and Order members Kingsley, Tonks, and Hestia Jones following at intervals behind. As they approached the foothills, Harry began to sense them, a cold pressure on his mind that grew stronger with each mile. By the time they reached the first significant peak, there was no doubt. "They're here," he told Lupin and Bill, who had drawn alongside him. "Lots of them. More than I've worked with before." "How many?" Bill asked tensely. Harry shook his head. "I can't tell exactly. Dozens at least. Maybe all of them." They flew higher, following a narrow valley between two peaks. The temperature dropped noticeably as they progressed, frost forming on their broomsticks despite the morning sun. Then they saw them. In a high basin sheltered by surrounding peaks, hundreds of Dementors hovered in eerie silence. They formed concentric circles, like a dark parody of an amphitheater, all facing inward toward the center of the basin. "Merlin's beard," Bill breathed, his face pale. "There must be over 200, Lupin estimated. Possibly every Dementor in Britain." Harry felt their awareness shift as he approached, hundreds of faceless hoods turning simultaneously to track his flight. The mental pressure intensified, not threatening, but overwhelming in its focus, like standing in the beam of a powerful spotlight. He guided his broomstick to hover at the edge of the basin. The nearest Dementors drifted slightly toward him, but stopped at a respectful distance. "They're waiting," Harry realized aloud. "They came because I called, and now they're waiting for instructions." "Harry," Lupin said cautiously, "are you certain you can control this many? The mental strain must be enormous." Harry didn't answer immediately. He was extending his awareness, trying to gauge the mood of the assembled Dementors. What he sensed surprised him. "They're not all the same," he said slowly. "They have. I don't know if personalities is the right word, but distinct qualities. Some are older, more powerful. Others are newer, less formed." He pointed to a particularly large Dementor hovering at the center of the innermost circle. "That one seems to be a leader of sorts. The others defer to it." "Dementors have hierarchies?" Bill asked, fascinated despite his obvious discomfort. "Apparently," Harry said. He took a deep breath and addressed the assembled creatures directly. "I called, and you came. Thank you." The collective focus of hundreds of Dementors intensified. Harry felt a response, not in words, but in impressions. Recognition. Acknowledgement. A strange sense of anticipation. "I need to understand why you left Azkaban," Harry continued. "Why you're responding to me instead of Voldemort." The response came as a flood of impressions, too complex to fully interpret. Harry caught fragments: Voldemort's fractured soul, repulsive in its wrongness. The Horcruxes, violations of natural order. And something about Harry himself, his brush with death as an infant, his journey beyond the veil in the Department of Mysteries, his connection to both realms. "I think," Harry said slowly, trying to translate for Lupin and Bill, "they see Voldemort as an abomination. His Horcruxes offend them somehow. And they recognize me as someone who understands death, who respects its place in the natural order." "That's far more complex motivation than Dementors are credited with," Lupin observed. "The prevailing theory has always been that they're simply drawn to fear and despair, feeding on positive emotions without higher reasoning." "That's not it at all," Harry said with growing certainty. "They're ancient beings with a specific purpose. They're drawn to broken souls because they're meant to heal the breach, somehow. To maintain the boundary between life and death. The leader Dementor drifted closer. Harry felt its individual focus separate from the collective, sharper, more precise. It projected a clear question: what would you have us do? The directness startled Harry. This wasn't just obedience, it was an offer of alliance. I need your help to defeat Voldemort, Harry said firmly. To find and destroy his remaining Horcruxes, and ultimately to destroy him. The Dementor's response came as a single, powerful impression of agreement. Behind it, the collective mind of the gathered Dementors pulsed with similar consent. I won't ask you to guard Azkaban again, Harry continued. That was the Ministry using you as tools. But I do need you to avoid attacking innocent people. Feed only on those who serve Voldemort willingly. This caused a ripple of reaction, something like confusion or protest. Harry sensed the complexity of their hunger, their fundamental nature as consumers of human happiness. He modified his approach. I understand you need to feed, he acknowledged. But there are ways to do so without permanently harming innocents. Small amounts from many, rather than destroying individuals completely. The leader Dementor considered this, then projected agreement, though Harry sensed reservation. This would be difficult for them, contrary to their instincts. For now, remain here, Harry instructed. I'll call smaller groups when needed for specific tasks. The leader, he gestured to the central Dementor, will coordinate between me and the rest of you. The assembled Dementors shifted, their circles tightening slightly in what Harry somehow knew was a gesture of acceptance. The leader drifted back to its central position, and the mental pressure on Harry eased somewhat. As they flew back toward Hogwarts, Lupin and Bill peppered Harry with questions about the exchange. Harry did his best to explain, though much of the communication had been too alien, too nonverbal to fully translate. It's a turning point, Lupin said as Hogwarts came back into view. Voldemort has lost one of his most feared weapons, and we've gained unprecedented allies. Allies with a complicated nature, Harry cautioned. They'll help us, but they're not pets or tools. They have their own understanding of this war. The Ministry won't see it that way, Bill warned. Scrimgeour will view this as either a threat or an asset to be controlled. Then we don't tell them the full extent, Harry decided. Not yet. Let them think I'm working with a small group of Dementors, not commanding the entire population. Lupin nodded approval. Wise. Information is power in this war. The fewer who know your true capabilities, the better. When they reported to Dumbledore, the headmaster listened thoughtfully, asking occasional questions about the Dementors' responses and organization. This confirms my suspicions about their fundamental nature, he said when Harry finished. They are not merely dark creatures feeding on human happiness, but guardians of a sort, maintaining the boundary between life and death, drawn to violations of that boundary. Like Horcruxes, Harry said. Precisely. And like you, Harry, someone who has crossed that boundary and returned. So what's our next move? Harry asked. We've destroyed 4 Horcruxes. We still need to confirm whether RAB destroyed the locket, and identify the final Horcrux. I believe I may have made progress on the RAB question, Dumbledore said, pulling a worn photograph from his desk drawer. Observe this order photograph from the First War. Harry examined the faded image, which showed about 20 wizards and witches gathered in what looked like the kitchen at Grimmauld Place. Look at the young man in the back row, beside your godfather, Dumbledore directed. Harry squinted at the figure, a thin, haughty-looking young man with Sirius's good looks but a more reserved demeanor. The caption identified him as Regulus Black. Regulus Black, Harry read aloud. Sirius's brother. But he was a Death Eater. Indeed he was, Dumbledore confirmed. Joined young, according to Sirius. But he became disillusioned and attempted to leave Voldemort's service, a fatal decision, normally. He disappeared in 1979, presumed killed on Voldemort's orders. Regulus Black, Harry repeated. RB. But what about the middle initial? His full name was Regulus Arcturus Black, Dumbledore said quietly. R.A.B. The pieces clicked into place in Harry's mind. So Sirius's brother might have stolen the real Horcrux. That's why he was killed, not just for trying to leave, but because he discovered Voldemort's secret. It's a compelling theory, Dumbledore agreed. And if true, the real locket might have been at Grimmauld Place at some point. Harry's mind flashed back to their cleaning efforts 2 summers ago. The heavy locket no one could open, he said suddenly. We found it cleaning out a display case. We threw it away. Are you certain? Dumbledore asked sharply. Yes, no, maybe, Harry stammered. We found lots of things. Creature kept stealing stuff back. Maybe he took it. Then we must speak with Creature immediately, Dumbledore decided. As the Black family home's rightful owner, you can summon him here, Harry. Harry nodded, still processing the implications. Creature, he called firmly. With a loud crack, the ancient house elf appeared, looking even more decrepit than Harry remembered. He bowed low, though his bullfrog voice dripped with contempt. The half-blood master calls Creature. What does he want from poor Creature? Creature, Harry said, trying to keep his voice level despite his dislike for the elf, I need to ask you about a locket. A heavy gold locket with an S on it that we found while cleaning Grimmauld Place. Creature froze, his bloodshot eyes widening. Master knows about the locket, he croaked. We think it belonged to Regulus Black, Harry pressed. Did you take it when we were throwing things out? It's very important, Creature. The house elf began to tremble, his hands clutching at his filthy loincloth. Master Regulus's locket, he whispered. Creature failed his final order. Failed to destroy it. Harry and Dumbledore exchanged significant looks. Tell us what happened, Creature, Dumbledore said gently. Tell us about Master Regulus and the locket. And so, haltingly at first, then in a flood of words, Creature told his story. How Voldemort had borrowed him to test the cave's defenses. How Creature had been left to die but escaped due to house elf magic. How Regulus, learning what Voldemort had done, had turned against his master. How Regulus had sacrificed himself in the cave to retrieve the Horcrux, ordering Creature to take the locket and destroy it. But Creature tried everything, the elf wailed, rocking back and forth. Nothing worked. Nothing would break Master Regulus's locket. Creature failed. You didn't fail, Creature, Harry said, surprising himself with the genuine sympathy he felt. Destroying a Horcrux requires extremely powerful magic. But we can destroy it now, if you'll tell us where it is. Creature's sobs subsided as he looked up at Harry with wary hope. Master will finish Master Regulus's work. Yes, Harry promised. We've already destroyed 4 others like it. We know how. Creature seemed to debate internally for a moment, then his shoulders slumped. Mundungus Fletcher, he spat. The thief took it when he cleaned out the house. Harry felt his heart sink. Mundungus, the petty criminal who had been filching Black family heirlooms to sell on the black market. Do you know where Fletcher is now? Dumbledore asked. Creature shook his head miserably. Creature tried to stop him, but the thief disapparated. Thank you, Creature, Dumbledore said kindly. You've been very helpful. Would you be willing to help us find Mundungus? It would fulfill Master Regulus's final order. Something shifted in Creature's demeanor, a straightening of his hunched shoulders, a newfound purpose in his rheumy eyes. Creature will find the thief, he declared with surprising conviction. For Master Regulus. Thank you, Harry said sincerely. When you locate him, come directly to me or Professor Dumbledore. Don't try to confront him yourself. After Creature disappeared with another crack, Harry turned to Dumbledore. So the locket is still out there, probably being sold to who knows who. A concerning development, Dumbledore agreed. But not insurmountable. Mundungus is a known quantity with predictable habits. The Order will locate him. And then we'll have 5 Horcruxes accounted for, Harry said. Just one more to identify and find. Indeed. And for that final Horcrux, your Dementor allies may prove invaluable. They spent the next hour discussing strategy, including plans for a mission Harry had been contemplating, a visit to Azkaban itself. With the Dementors gone, the prison was now guarded by Aurors, but Harry suspected there might be valuable information there, residual traces of Dementor magic, perhaps, or insights about their nature that could strengthen his control. As Harry finally left Dumbledore's office, exhaustion caught up with him. The mental strain of connecting with hundreds of Dementors, combined with the emotional impact of Kreacher's story, left him drained. He headed back to Gryffindor Tower, craving sleep despite it being only mid-afternoon. He never made it. Halfway there, his scar erupted in blinding pain. Voldemort's rage crashed through his mental defenses like a tidal wave. Harry collapsed against the wall, barely aware of his surroundings as a vision overtook him. A circular room, Death Eaters kneeling in a ring. Voldemort pacing, his fury palpable. The Dementors have betrayed us, Voldemort hissed. All of them. My lord, Bellatrix simpered, perhaps they are merely scattered, confused, silence. Voldemort's wand slashed, sending Bellatrix sprawling. I have felt it. Something has turned them. Someone has taken what was mine. His red eyes seemed to look directly at Harry. Potter, he whispered. Always Potter. The boy cannot command Dementors, my lord, Snape said smoothly. It defies all magical theory. Does it, Severus? Voldemort turned his terrible gaze on the potion's master. Then explain how my servants at Hogsmeade saw him direct Dementors against my faithful. Explain how every Dementor in Britain has vanished from my awareness. Snape bowed his head. I cannot, my lord. No, Voldemort said softly, dangerously. You cannot. Just as you cannot explain why I feel, diminished. Why I sense parts of myself, missing. The assembled Death Eaters shifted nervously. We will adapt, Voldemort decided. If Potter has somehow claimed the Dementors, we will develop new weapons. Inferi. Giants. The werewolf packs. And we will accelerate our plans. The Ministry will fall by summer. Hogwarts will follow. He turned to Bellatrix, who had crawled back to her position. Your sister reports that her son has disappeared from Hogwarts. Find Draco Malfoy. Find him and bring him to me. Yes, my lord, Bellatrix whispered. And Severus, Voldemort continued. I want everything you know about Potter's activities. Every detail, every rumor. Especially regarding Dementors or any other unusual magic. Of course, my lord, Snape said, his face unreadable. The rest of you, prepare for war. Full-scale war. No more shadows, no more waiting. We strike now, while Potter is still learning the extent of his new power. Before he can master it. Voldemort's eyes seemed to burn into Harry's own. I feel you watching, Potter, he whispered. Enjoy your small victory. It will be your last. Harry came back to himself, gasping, to find Ron and Hermione kneeling beside him in the corridor. Harry. Hermione's face was white with fear. What happened? Your scar, he knows, Harry panted, struggling to sit up. Voldemort knows about the Dementors. And he suspects about the Horcruxes. He's accelerating his plans. Full-scale war, he said. We need to tell Dumbledore, Ron said immediately, helping Harry to his feet. But Harry shook his head. No time. We need to move faster. The locket, the last Horcrux, we need to find them now. And I need to master this connection with the Dementors completely. Harry, you can barely stand, Hermione protested. I'll manage, Harry insisted. This is it, don't you see? This is the turning point. Whoever moves fastest now wins. As they helped him toward the hospital wing, Hermione insisting he at least get a pepper-up potion. Harry's mind raced with plans. Voldemort was right about one thing, this was no time for half measures. If it was to be open war, Harry would need every advantage, every ally he could muster. Including an army of Dementors that even the Dark Lord himself feared. The next week passed in a blur of activity. The Order, alerted to Voldemort's accelerated timeline, increased patrols and protective measures around key targets. Dumbledore called in favors from international contacts, preparing for the conflict to come. At Hogwarts, defensive enchantments were strengthened, and older students received additional combat training under the guise of advanced practical defense. Harry, meanwhile, focused on two priorities, mastering his control of the Dementors and locating the missing Horcruxes. For the former, he established a training routine with a small group of Dementors in the Forbidden Forest, working with Lupin to refine his commands and extend his range of influence. To Harry's surprise, the Dementors proved more intelligent and adaptable than anyone had believed possible. It's not just that they understand commands, he explained to Ron and Hermione one evening in the Room of Requirement. They can interpret intent, adapt to changing circumstances. They're individuals, with different strengths and, well, not personalities exactly, but distinct qualities. That contradicts everything written about them, Hermione said, making notes for what had become their Dementor Project journal. The academic consensus has always been that they're essentially identical, with a hive mind mentality. The academics never tried talking to them, Harry pointed out. They just observed from a distance, through the lens of fear. So what can they actually do? Ron asked practically. Besides suck out souls and make everyone miserable. They're incredible scouts, Harry explained. They can cover vast areas quickly, pass through most magical barriers, and sense magic in ways wizards can't. They can identify individuals by their, I don't know what to call it, soul signature. Even under Polyjuice. That's why they recognized Sirius even in his animagus form, Hermione realized. They weren't seeing his appearance, they were sensing his essence. Exactly, Harry nodded. And they can detect traces of powerful magic. Horcruxes leave a kind of stain on reality that they can sense from a distance. Wicked, Ron said, looking impressed despite himself. So they're like magical bloodhounds. Plus, they're nearly impossible to hurt with most spells, Harry added. Only the Patronus affects them, and that just drives them away temporarily. Their research was interrupted when the door opened to admit Neville Longbottom, looking anxious. Harry, McGonagall's looking for you, he said. Sounds important. Harry thanked him and hurried to the deputy headmistress's office, where he found not only McGonagall but also Kingsley Shacklebolt. We've located Mundungus Fletcher, Kingsley announced without preamble. He's being held at an order-safe house. Claims he no longer has the locket. Harry's heart sank. Did he sell it? To who? That's the interesting part, Kingsley said. He says a ministry official confiscated it from him when he was selling without a permit in Diagon Alley last summer. Which official? Harry demanded. Kingsley's deep voice held a note of grim satisfaction. Dolores Umbridge. Harry felt a surge of cold anger at the name. Umbridge has the locket Horcrux. So it would seem, McGonagall said, her mouth a thin line of displeasure. Which presents us with a challenging extraction problem. Not really, Harry said with sudden clarity. I know exactly how to handle this. An hour later, Harry outlined his plan to Dumbledore, who listened with raised eyebrows. Audacious, the headmaster commented when Harry finished. Though not without significant risk. The Ministry is already concerned about your connection to the Dementors. Which is exactly why it will work, Harry argued. Umbridge is terrified of them. The threat of Dementors will distract her completely from protecting the locket. And your proposed timing? Tomorrow night, Harry said firmly. She stays late at the Ministry on Fridays, according to Mr. Weasley. The building will be nearly empty. Dumbledore considered for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. But you will have order backup, and you will exercise extreme caution. No unnecessary risks. Of course, Harry agreed, though they both knew this entire mission was, by definition, an unnecessary risk. The next evening, Harry prepared in the room of requirement with Lupin, Tonks, and Bill Weasley. The plan was deceptively simple. Harry would enter the Ministry under his invisibility cloak, accompanied by 2 Dementors. While the Dementors confronted Umbridge, Harry would locate and retrieve the locket. Order members would monitor from concealed positions, ready to intervene if necessary. Remember, Lupin cautioned as Harry checked his equipment, this is a stealth mission. In and out with minimal contact. If you're discovered, we abort immediately. Got it, Harry nodded, tucking a small hand mirror into his pocket, a communication device linked to identical mirrors carried by each team member. At precisely 8 o'clock, they gathered at the designated apparition point in Hogsmeade. Tonks, who had visited Umbridge's office previously as an Auror, would side-along apparate with Harry to a service entrance of the Ministry building. From there, they would proceed according to plan. Ready? Tonks asked, her hair a nondescript brown for the mission, her face subtly altered to be forgettable. Harry nodded, pulling the invisibility cloak around himself. With a tight squeeze and a crack, they disappeared from Hogsmeade and reappeared in a narrow alley in London. A nondescript door was set into the brick wall before them. Service and trance, Tonks whispered. Security's minimal, just a magical signature check. She tapped her wand on the door in a specific pattern. It glowed briefly, then swung open to reveal a plain corridor. You're clear, she murmured. I'll be at position B, use the mirror if you need extraction. Harry slipped inside, careful to keep the cloak covering him completely. The corridor led to a small atrium with several lifts. According to their intelligence, Umbridge's office was on level 1, along with other senior Ministry officials. Once in the lift, Harry closed his eyes and reached out mentally. I need you. 2 of you. Come to the Ministry of Magic, main entrance. Wait for my signal. The lift doors opened on level 1. Harry stepped out cautiously, orienting himself. The corridor was deserted, most offices dark. At the far end, a light shone beneath a door adorned with a small brass plaque, Dolores Umbridge, Senior Undersecretary to the Minister. Harry approached silently, pausing outside to listen. He could hear humming from within, that girlish, self-satisfied sound he remembered all too well. Extending his awareness, he confirmed that his Dementors had arrived at the Ministry entrance, waiting as instructed. Taking a deep breath, Harry tried the door handle. Locked, of course. He drew his wand from beneath the cloak and whispered, Alohomra. The lock clicked softly. Harry eased the door open just enough to peer inside. Umbridge sat at her desk, quill scratching across parchment, her office as aggressively pink and kitten-adorned as her Hogwarts quarters had been. And there, around her short, thick neck, hung a heavy gold locket with an ornate S on the front. Harry felt a surge of triumph. The Horcrux was literally around her neck. But his satisfaction faded as he realized the complication this presented. He'd expected to search her office, not have to remove the locket from her person. Stepping back from the door, Harry raised the mirror and whispered, Moony. Lupin's face appeared in the glass. She's wearing it, Harry breathed. The locket. Around her neck. Complicate matters, Lupin replied tensely. Can you lure her away from the office? Perhaps trigger an alarm elsewhere? Harry considered, then had a better idea. I'm going with Plan B, he whispered. Dementors directly to her office. Be ready to move quickly. Before Lupin could protest, Harry closed the connection and reached out to his waiting Dementors. Come to me now. Level 1, end of the corridor. Enter the pink office and surround the woman inside, but do not harm her. He felt their acknowledgement, their eagerness to comply. Within moments, the temperature in the corridor plummeted. Frost formed on the brass doorplate as two Dementors glided silently toward him, their tattered cloaks barely brushing the floor. Harry gestured toward Umbridge's door. "In there," he whispered. "Surround her, but don't touch her unless I command it." The Dementors drifted forward, passing through the door as if it were mist. From inside, Harry heard a startled gasp, followed by a shrill scream of terror. "No! Get back! Expecto Patronum!" A feeble silver mist sputtered from Umbridge's wand, not nearly strong enough to form a Patronus. Harry slipped into the office under his cloak to find Umbridge backed against her desk, face pale with terror as the Dementors hovered on either side of her, boxing her in. Help!" she cried toward the open door. "Dementors! Someone help!" Harry closed the door with a flick of his wand, the lock clicking back into place. Then he removed his invisibility cloak, revealing himself to Umbridge's bulging, terrified eyes. "Potter," she gasped. "What? How? Hello, Professor," Harry said coldly. "I see you're wearing something that belongs to me." Her hand flew to the locket. "This is mine. A family heirloom." "Really?" "Because Mundungus Fletcher says you confiscated it from him last summer. And before that, it belonged to Sirius Black's family." The Dementors drifted closer to Umbridge, responding to Harry's anger. The room grew colder, frost forming on her collection of ornamental plates bearing gambling kittens. You're controlling them," Umbridge whispered, her eyes darting between Harry and the Dementors. "That's impossible." "Clearly not," Harry replied. "Now, I'll make this simple. Give me the locket, and I'll leave you alone." Umbridge's fingers clutched the Horcrux possessively. "The Ministry will hear about this," she threatened, though her voice quavered. "Attacking a senior official, I haven't touched you," Harry pointed out. And who would believe that Harry Potter walked into the Ministry controlling Dementors? Sounds like hysteria to me. Stress-induced delusions, perhaps. One Dementor drifted close enough that its rattling breath stirred Umbridge's mousy hair. She whimpered, shrinking away. "Last chance," Harry said quietly. "The locket. Now." With trembling fingers, Umbridge lifted the chain over her head and thrust the locket toward Harry, keeping her arm fully extended to maintain maximum distance. "Take it. Just call them off." Harry approached cautiously, aware that even terrified, Umbridge was dangerous. As his fingers closed around the locket, he felt it, a cold, malevolent pulse, like a tiny heartbeat of pure hatred. The Horcrux. He pocketed it quickly, then backed toward the door. "Remember, Professor," he said softly, "if you tell anyone about this visit, I'll know. And next time, I might not keep my friends on such a tight leash." The Dementors drifted backward as Harry mentally commanded them to follow him. At the door, he paused. "By the way, I haven't forgotten what you did to me last year." He raised his right hand, where the words "I must not tell lies" were still faintly visible. "Consider this a partial payment." With that, he donned the invisibility cloak again and slipped out, the Dementors gliding behind him like deadly shadows. They moved quickly through the deserted corridors to the service entrance, where Tonks was waiting anxiously. "Did you get it?" she whispered. Harry pulled back the cloak enough to show the locket dangling from his fingers. "Mission accomplished." "The Dementors?" "I've sent them back to the mountains," Harry confirmed. "They performed perfectly." Tonks looked impressed despite herself. "Let's get out of here before someone notices the walking freezers passing through the Ministry." They apparat back to Hogsmeade, where Lupin and Bill were waiting with visible relief. The group hurried back to Hogwarts, the locket safely contained in one of Bill's curse-proof boxes. In Dumbledore's office, Harry recounted the mission, omitting his more threatening comments to Umbridge. The headmaster examined the contained locket with grave satisfaction. 5 Horcruxes accounted for, he said quietly. The diary, the ring, the diadem, the cup, and now the locket. Only one remains unidentified. Any progress on that front? Harry asked hopefully. Some, Dumbledore acknowledged. I have been reviewing memories of Tom Riddle's later years. There are patterns in the objects he chose, items of historical significance, connected to Hogwarts founders when possible. Could it be something of Gryffindor's? Bill suggested. He already used relics from the other 3 founders. The only known relic of Godric Gryffindor is the sword, Dumbledore said, nodding toward the glass case where it rested. And it has been secure in this office for centuries, with the exception of its brief appearance to you in the Chamber of Secrets, Harry. So what else could it be? Harry pressed. Dumbledore's expression grew troubled. I have a theory, but I hope I am wrong. There is a possibility that the final Horcrux is not an object at all, but a living being, his snake, Nagini. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with Dementors. He turned his snake into a Horcrux. Is that even possible? It would be unprecedented and extremely risky, Dumbledore admitted. But Tom Riddle has always pushed magical boundaries, especially those concerning life and death. How do we confirm it? Bill asked practically. I believe your Dementor allies might help with that, Harry, Dumbledore said. If they can sense soul fragments in inanimate objects, presumably they could detect one in a living creature. Harry nodded slowly. I'll ask them. But we'd need to get close to Nagini somehow. One challenge at a time, Dumbledore counseled. First, let us destroy this Horcrux. The ritual was becoming familiar, the careful extraction from the containment box, the presentation of Gryffindor's sword, the bracing for whatever psychological defense the Horcrux might mount. This time, when Harry approached with the sword, the locket sprang open of its own accord. From within emerged twin figures of smoke, Ron and Hermione, their faces twisted with contempt. Always second best, Smoke Ron sneered. Even your so-called power over Dementors is just borrowed, another coincidence of your scar, not true ability. We tolerate you out of pity, Smoke Hermione added cruelly. The boy who lived, surrounded by creatures of despair, how fitting. Harry steeled himself against the words, recognizing them as manipulations designed to weaken his resolve. With a decisive swing, he brought the sword down on the locket. There was a terrible screeching sound, a burst of black smoke, and then silence. 5 down. 1 to go. The destruction of the locket Horcrux represented a major victory, but Harry had little time to celebrate. Reports of increased Death Eater activity poured in daily, confirming Voldemort's accelerated timeline. The Daily Prophet carried stories of disappearances, mysterious deaths, and Muggle tragedies that were clearly the work of Death Eaters. He's striking out in rage, Lupin explained during an order meeting in Dumbledore's office. The loss of the Dementors, combined with our destruction of his Horcruxes, though he may not understand exactly what's happening, has made him desperate and volatile. Which makes him more dangerous, Moody growled. Cornered beasts fight hardest. The meeting covered various defensive strategies, including plans to evacuate Hogwarts if necessary. But the conversation kept returning to the same question, how to confirm whether Nagini was indeed the final Horcrux, and if so, how to destroy it. The snake rarely leaves Voldemort's side, Snape reported, his face more sallow than usual. The Dark Lord has become extremely protective of it in recent weeks. Almost paranoid. He senses the loss of his other soul fragments, Dumbledore surmised. Even without understanding the cause, he feels diminished, vulnerable. We need to get a Dementor close enough to sense whether Nagini contains a soul fragment, Harry said, thinking aloud. But if she's always with Voldemort? That would require infiltrating the Dark Lord's inner circle, Snape said dismissively. Impossible, even for a Dementor. He has become suspicious of them since they abandoned his cause. Not infiltration, Harry said slowly, an idea forming. Confrontation. On our terms, not his. All eyes turned to him. What are you suggesting, Potter? McGonagall asked warily. A trap, Harry explained. Something Voldemort wants badly enough to come personally, bringing Nagini with him. And what could possibly tempt the Dark Lord to expose himself so recklessly? Snape asked with thinly veiled skepticism. Me, Harry said simply. He wants me dead more than anything. If he thought I was vulnerable, isolated from Dumbledore's protection. Absolutely not, McGonagall interrupted sharply. We are not using you as bait, Potter. It needn't be as dangerous as it sounds, Harry argued. I'm not suggesting a direct confrontation. Just enough of an appearance to confirm whether Nagini is a Horcrux. Debate erupted around the table. Some Order members flatly rejected the idea of risking Harry, while others saw the strategic value in confirming the final Horcrux's identity. Dumbledore remained silent throughout, his blue eyes fixed thoughtfully on Harry. Finally, the headmaster raised a hand for silence. The desire to protect Harry is admirable, he said quietly. But we must also respect his role in this war. If Harry is willing to take this calculated risk, with proper safeguards in place, I believe we should consider the plan carefully. This didn't fully satisfy the dissenters, but it moved the conversation from outright rejection to practical planning. After much discussion, they developed a compromise approach. Harry would not personally act as bait, but they would create a scenario suggesting his vulnerability. The Dementors are key to this plan, Harry explained. Voldemort knows I can command them, but he doesn't know the extent of my control or their loyalty to me. We can use that uncertainty. The plan they eventually agreed upon was multi-layered. First, they would leak information through carefully chosen channels that Harry would be traveling to the Ministry for questioning about the Dementor situation. Then, they would stage an apparent falling out between Harry and his Dementor allies, suggesting his control was weakening. Finally, they would create a security gap during the supposed transit to the Ministry, a window of opportunity too tempting for Voldemort to ignore. If we do this right, Bill said as they finalized the details, Voldemort will believe he's exploiting a perfect opportunity, when in fact he'll be walking into our trap. And if the Dementors confirm Nagini is a Horcrux? Kingsley asked. We'll be prepared to act, Dumbledore assured him. But we must be certain before we attempt to eliminate the snake. If Nagini is not the final Horcrux, attacking her would only alert Voldemort to our hunt without gaining us anything. The meeting concluded with assignments for each Order member. The operation would take place in 3 days' time, enough to prepare thoroughly, but not so long that their intelligence might become stale or leaks could occur. As the others filed out, Dumbledore asked Harry to remain behind. When they were alone, the headmaster regarded him thoughtfully. You've changed, Harry, he observed. Your connection to the Dementors has altered you in ways I'm not sure you fully recognize. Harry shifted uncomfortably. How do you mean? There is a clarity to your thinking now. A willingness to make difficult decisions, to see paths others might miss. Dumbledore leaned forward. It is not necessarily concerning, but it is noticeable. Your plan today was not something the Harry Potter of last year would have conceived. Is that bad? Harry asked defensively. Not inherently, Dumbledore said carefully. But power changes people, Harry. Even the power to command creatures of darkness for noble purposes. I merely caution awareness. Harry nodded, though privately he felt Dumbledore was being overcautious. Yes, working with the Dementors had changed his perspective, but hadn't it made him more effective? More strategic? Wasn't that a good thing in wartime? He left the headmaster's office with these questions lingering in his mind. As he walked the corridors back to Gryffindor Tower, he found himself more aware than usual of the students he passed, their carefree laughter, their ordinary concerns, the normal lives they led while he planned traps for the darkest wizard in history. Had he changed? Undoubtedly. But Harry saw it as necessary growth, not concerning transformation. The war demanded adaptation. If commanding Dementors gave him an edge against Voldemort, wasn't that worth any personal cost? The trap was set for a remote stretch of road between Hogsmeade and London, a wooded area where the magical transportation network had a deliberate, blind spot, created by the Order. According to their leaked intelligence, Harry would be traveling through this area with minimal escort, his relationship with the Dementor supposedly strained due to Ministry interference. In reality, Harry wouldn't be there at all. A carefully disguised Order member would use Polyjuice Potion to impersonate him, while the Real Harry would be hidden nearby with a contingent of Dementors, ready to sense Nagini if Voldemort took the bait. The evening before the operation, Harry met with his core Dementor allies in the Forbidden Forest. 5 of them formed a semicircle around him as he explained the plan. "I need you to sense whether the snake contains a soul fragment like the objects we found before," he concluded. "But you must remain hidden until I give the signal. Voldemort must believe he's springing a trap, not walking into one." The lead Dementor, the same one that had communicated with him in the mountain basin, projected understanding. Over months of working together, their communication had become more refined, less alien. Harry could now interpret their responses with greater accuracy. "There's one more thing," Harry added. "If the snake does contain a soul fragment, I'll need you to help me destroy it." This caused a ripple of reaction among the Dementors, excitement, eagerness. Harry had learned that they were drawn to Horcruxes not just because they could sense them, but because they found them deeply offensive, violations of natural law that they instinctively sought to correct. "Can you destroy a Horcrux directly?" Harry asked, voicing a question that had been forming in his mind for weeks. The lead Dementor's response was complex, not a simple yes or no, but a tentative affirmative with caveats. They could not destroy the physical container as the sword had done, but they could extract and consume the soul fragment itself, if given direct access. This was new information, potentially game-changing. "You can remove the soul fragment without destroying the container?" Harry clarified. "Affirmative impression. Including from a living container? Like the snake?" Another affirmative, though with a darker undertone. Extracting a soul fragment from a living being would likely kill it in the process. Harry digested this information thoughtfully. If the Dementors could extract Horcruxes without destroying their containers, it opened new possibilities. But more immediately, it gave them a way to eliminate Nagini as a Horcrux even in the heat of battle, without needing to physically destroy the snake with basilisk venom or Gryffindor's sword. "Thank you," he told them. "Be ready tomorrow at midday. Follow my mental commands exactly." As the Dementors glided away, Harry felt a familiar presence behind him. He turned to find Luna Lovegood watching from the edge of the clearing, her protuberant eyes curious but unafraid. "Hello, Harry," she said dreamily. "You've made some interesting friends." Harry stared at her in shock. He'd been careful to keep these meetings secret, yet Luna had apparently followed him into the forest without him noticing. "Luna. What are you doing out here? It's dangerous." "Oh, I often come to the forest at dusk," she explained casually. "The Bowtruckles are more active then. But I've never seen you with the Dementors before. They seem quite attached to you." Harry approached her cautiously. "How long have you known about you commanding Dementors?" Luna tilted her head thoughtfully. "I suspected after the Hogsmeade incident. The Raxperts around you changed after that. They're usually confused, you see, but lately they've been more purposeful." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Harry couldn't help a small smile. Luna's unique perspective was oddly refreshing. "You're not afraid of them?" he asked, nodding toward where the Dementors had disappeared among the trees. "They're quite sad creatures, aren't they?" Luna observed. "Not evil, exactly. Just hungry. Always hungry for something they can never truly have." Her insight was surprisingly accurate. Harry had come to similar conclusions through his direct connection with the Dementors. "Luna, you can't tell anyone about this," Harry said firmly. "It's important for the war effort." "Of course not," she agreed easily. "Some secrets need keeping. Like how Dumbledore's hand is cursed with something that's slowly killing him." Harry startled at this. "What did you say about Dumbledore's hand?" "The blackness is spreading," Luna said matter-of-factly. "I noticed it last week during dinner. It's past his wrist now. I suspect he doesn't have more than a month or two, though he's hiding it well. Harry felt cold that had nothing to do with the nearby Dementors. He knew Dumbledore's hand was injured from destroying the ring Horcrux, but the headmaster had never suggested it was life-threatening. Are you sure? He pressed. Luna nodded solemnly. My mother experimented with unusual magic. I recognize the signs of certain curses. That one's particularly nasty, designed to spread until it consumes the victim entirely. Harry thanked Luna, extracted another promise of secrecy, and escorted her back to the castle. His mind was racing. If Dumbledore was dying, had been dying all year, it explained his urgency about the Horcruxes, his willingness to take risks, his focus on preparing Harry. That night, Harry barely slept. The trap for Voldemort, the possibility of confirming and destroying the final Horcrux, and now the revelation about Dumbledore's condition, it was too much to process all at once. When morning came, Harry joined the Order members assembling for the operation with a sense of grim determination. This had to work. With or without Dumbledore, they needed to end Voldemort soon. The plan proceeded smoothly at first. Tonks, disguised as Harry with Polyjuice Potion, set out on the designated route with Lupin and Moody as her escorts. The Real Harry, accompanied by Bill and Kingsley, took position on a wooded ridge overlooking the ambush site. A dozen Dementors waited in the forest around them, hidden from view but connected to Harry's mind. Remember, Kingsley cautioned, we're here to confirm whether Nagini is a Horcrux, not to engage Voldemort directly. If the snake appears, let the Dementors sense it, then we withdraw immediately. Harry nodded, though privately he wondered if they might not have a better opportunity to strike. If the Dementors could extract the soul fragment from Nagini, and if they could kill the snake in the process, Voldemort would be mortal once more. The hours crawled by. Noon came and went. The decoy party passed through the vulnerable section of the route without incident. Had Voldemort seen through their ruse? Then, just as they were considering aborting the mission, Harry's scar exploded with pain. He's coming, he gasped, pressing his palm against the lightning bolt. Not here, he's attacking the decoy party further down the road. Kingsley immediately sent his Lynx Patronus to warn Tonks, Lupin, and Moody. Bill helped Harry to his feet as they prepared to apparate to the new location. Wait, Harry said, reaching out to his hidden Dementors. We need to bring them with us. Follow my signature, he projected. Remain hidden until I call. The three wizards apparat to a point a quarter-mile from where the Patronus had been sent. They could hear the sounds of battle ahead, flashes of light, explosions, shouted curses. They approached cautiously, using the trees for cover. Through a gap in the foliage, Harry saw chaos, at least a dozen Death Eaters engaged with the Order members. Tonks, still disguised as Harry, was dueling furiously with Bellatrix Lestrange. Lupin and Moody fought back-to-back against multiple attackers. But where was Voldemort? And Nagini? Harry scanned the battlefield, then froze. There, standing apart from the main fight, watching with cold calculation, was the pale, serpentine figure of Lord Voldemort. And coiled at his feet, massive and alert, was Nagini. Harry extended his awareness to the Dementors, who had followed as instructed and now hovered at the edges of the forest around the battle. The snake, he directed them. Focus on the snake. Is there a soul fragment inside it? He felt their attention shift, their collective awareness honing in on Nagini. For a tense moment, there was no response. Then it came, a powerful affirmative impression, tinged with the same revulsion they had shown toward the other Horcruxes. Nagini was indeed the final Horcrux. Harry relayed this confirmation to Bill and Kingsley, who exchanged grim looks. We need to withdraw and report, Kingsley decided. Mission accomplished. But Harry hesitated, watching the battle unfold. Moody had taken a hit and was fighting one-legged. Tonks was bleeding from a gash across her cheek. Even Lupin seemed to be tiring. We can end this now, Harry said quietly. The Dementors can extract the Horcrux from Nagini, and we have enough Order members here to at least attempt to take Voldemort while he's mortal. That wasn't the plan, Harry, Bill reminded him urgently. We're outnumbered, and Voldemort is still the most powerful dark wizard alive, Horcruxes or no. But we might not get another chance, Harry insisted. Not with both Voldemort and Nagini exposed like this. Before either could respond, a scream cut through the battle noise. Tonks had fallen, struck by one of Bellatrix's curses. Her polyjuice transformation was fading, revealing pink hair beneath the messy black. A decoy. Bellatrix shrieked triumphantly. The real Potter isn't here. Voldemort's head snapped up, his red eyes scanning the battlefield, then the surrounding forest. For a horrible moment, his gaze seemed to fix directly on their hiding place. Harry made his decision. Cover me, he told Bill and Kingsley, then reached out to the Dementors with his full mental strength. Now. Attack the Death Eaters. Extract the soul fragment from the snake. Protect our allies. The effect was immediate and dramatic. From all sides of the clearing, Dementors descended on the battle. Death Eaters screamed in terror as the dark creatures swooped toward them, their skeletal hands outstretched. 3 Dementors headed directly for Nagini, who reared back, hissing in alarm. Voldemort's face contorted with rage as he realized what was happening. Potter, he roared, firing blasting curses into the forest. Show yourself. Harry stepped from the trees, wand raised. I'm right here, Tom. Even as he spoke, chaos erupted around them. Death Eaters fled from the advancing Dementors. Order members, recognizing their allies, pressed their advantage. Bill and Kingsley emerged from cover, firing spells to protect Harry as he faced Voldemort. But Harry's focus was on Nagini and the 3 Dementors surrounding her. The massive snake thrashed and coiled, trying to escape, but the Dementors had her trapped. One reached out with a decayed, scabbed hand, touching the snake's head. What happened next was unlike anything Harry had witnessed. The Dementors had lowered toward Nagini's mouth, and something like silver mist began to emerge from the snake, not a full soul, but a fragment, twisted and malformed. The Dementor absorbed this mist, its form seeming to shudder with the intake. Voldemort screamed, a sound of pure agony that had nothing to do with physical pain. He staggered, clutching his chest, his red eyes wide with incomprehension and fear. What have you done? He gasped, staring at Harry with something like horror. What have you done? Nagini collapsed, her massive body limp and lifeless. The Dementor that had extracted the Horcrux drifted backward, seemingly satisfied. Harry faced Voldemort, wand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. I've made you mortal, Tom. Just like the rest of us. Voldemort's face twisted with fury and terror. For the first time since Harry had known him, the Dark Lord looked genuinely afraid. Without his Horcruxes, without his snake, he could truly die. But even immortal Voldemort was a formidable opponent. With a howl of rage, he launched a barrage of spells so powerful that Harry was forced to dive for cover. The tree behind him exploded into splinters. Kill him. Voldemort commanded his Death Eaters. Kill Potter now. But the Death Eaters were in disarray, many already fleeing from the Dementors. Those who remained found themselves fighting for their lives against reinvigorated Order members. Harry rolled to his feet, casting a shield charm just in time to deflect another of Voldemort's curses. He needed to end this, to press his advantage while Voldemort was off balance. He reached out to the Dementors again. Surround him. All of you. Don't let him escape. The Dementors responded immediately, gliding toward Voldemort from all directions. The Dark Lord's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. He cast several Patronus charms, but each failed, his fear and rage too dominant for the spell to form properly. You think these creatures will save you, Potter? Voldemort snarled, though his voice held a note of desperation. They are darkness incarnate. They cannot be trusted. They don't serve the dark, Tom, Harry replied, advancing slowly. They serve balance. And you've violated that balance with your Horcruxes, your attempts to cheat death. The Dementors closed in, forming a tightening circle around Voldemort. The temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the ground at the Dark Lord's feet. For a moment, it seemed they had him trapped. Then, with a last look of pure hatred at Harry, Voldemort did something unexpected. He transformed, his body dissolving into that wraith-like form Harry had glimpsed years ago in the Forbidden Forest. This spectral Voldemort shot upward, passing through the ring of Dementors and vanishing into the darkening sky. No! Harry shouted, but it was too late. Voldemort had escaped. Around them, the battle was ending. Most Death Eaters had fled or been captured. Order members were tending to the wounded. Tonks was conscious again, being supported by Lupin. Did I see what I thought I saw? Moody growled, stumping over to Harry. Did your Dementor friends just extract a Horcrux from the snake? Harry nodded, still staring at the sky where Voldemort had disappeared. Nagini's dead. The Horcrux is destroyed. Voldemort's mortal now. But still dangerous, Kingsley warned, joining them. Perhaps more dangerous than ever, now that he knows what we've done and what we know. Harry knew this was true. A cornered Voldemort, stripped of his immortality, would be utterly ruthless. But for the first time, Harry felt something he hadn't truly allowed himself to feel before, the real possibility of victory. We need to get back to Hogwarts, Bill said urgently. Report to Dumbledore. Plan our next move. Harry called the Dementors back, thanking them for their assistance and instructing them to return to the mountains. As they glided away, he noticed several Order members watching with a mixture of fear and amazement. Blimey, Harry, Tonks said weakly from Lupin's side. When did you learn to do that? It's a long story, Harry replied, suddenly exhausted now that the adrenaline was wearing off. I'll explain everything back at the castle. As they prepared to apparate back to Hogsmeade, Harry took one last look at Nagini's lifeless body. 6 Horcruxes, all destroyed. Voldemort himself, now mortal and on the run. The endgame had begun. They returned to Hogwarts to find the castle in a state of high alert. News of the battle had somehow preceded them, and Dumbledore was waiting in the entrance hall with McGonagall and several other staff members. Harry, Dumbledore said with evident relief. When we heard fighting had broken out, we feared the worst. We confirmed it, sir, Harry reported immediately. Nagini was the final Horcrux. The Dementors extracted and destroyed the soul fragment. A murmur ran through the assembled staff. Dumbledore's face showed both satisfaction and concern. And Voldemort? Escaped, Harry admitted. But he knows what we've done. He felt the Horcrux being destroyed. Then we must prepare, Dumbledore said gravely. Tom will not retreat for long. Having lost his path to immortality, he will seek to end this quickly, decisively. They moved to the headmaster's office for a full debriefing. The wounded were taken to the hospital wing, while those uninjured reported everything that had happened. Dumbledore listened intently, asking occasional questions, particularly about the Dementor's ability to extract the Horcrux from Nagini. Fascinating, he murmured when Harry explained the process. In hindsight, it makes perfect sense. Dementors feed on souls, why not fragments of souls as well? And their nature as guardians of the boundary between life and death would make them natural enemies of Horcruxes. The question now, McGonagall interjected practically, is what you know who will do next. He will gather his forces for a decisive strike, Dumbledore said with certainty. Having lost both his Horcruxes and the Dementors, he will rely on overwhelming force. The giants, the werewolves, every Death Eater and dark creature loyal to his cause. Against what target? Lupin asked. The Ministry. Hogwarts, Harry said quietly, and knew immediately he was right. He'll come for Hogwarts. Dumbledore nodded slowly. I believe Harry is correct. Tom has always been obsessed with Hogwarts, it was his first true home, the place where he discovered his power. And now it houses both Harry and myself, the two wizards he most wishes to destroy. We need to evacuate the students, McGonagall said immediately. If an attack is coming, yes, Dumbledore agreed. But discreetly. We don't want to cause panic, nor do we want Tom to know we're expecting him. The younger students will be sent home, ostensibly due to a health concern. Older students may choose to stay or go. Orders went out immediately. House heads began organizing their students, while Order members strengthened the castle's defenses. Harry found himself in the curious position of being both a student and a key military advisor, his unique connection to the Dementors making him essential to their defense planning. How many Dementors can you reliably command in battle? Kingsley asked during a strategy session that evening. All of them, Harry replied, surprising even himself with his certainty. Their leader, the large one from the mountain, helps coordinate my commands to the others. They'll follow my direction without confusion or hesitation. And you're sure of their loyalty? Moody pressed. Creatures of darkness aren't known for their steadfastness. They're loyal, Harry confirmed. Not out of affection or even obedience, exactly. It's more, alignment. My goals match their nature. Voldemort violated natural law with his Horcruxes. They want to correct that imbalance as much as we want to defeat him. Plans took shape through the night and into the next day. Students below 5th year were quietly sent home. Many older students chose to stay, particularly those in Dumbledore's army who had trained with Harry the previous year. Harry barely slept, dividing his time between defense preparations and mental communication with the Dementor leader, coordinating their role in the coming battle. When he did sleep, his dreams were troubled, visions of Voldemort rallying his forces, promising them Hogwarts as a prize, swearing vengeance against the boy who commanded death. 3 days after the ambush that destroyed Nagini, Harry was summoned to Dumbledore's office late in the evening. He found the headmaster standing by the window, gazing out at the starlit grounds. Our scouts report movement, Dumbledore said without turning. Large groups traveling toward Hogwarts from multiple directions. Tom has been more efficient in his preparations than I anticipated. How soon? Harry asked, joining him at the window. Tomorrow, perhaps. The next day at latest. Dumbledore finally turned, and in the moonlight, Harry could see how gaunt his face had become, how the blackness had indeed spread past his wrist, disappearing beneath his sleeve. Luna had been right. Sir, your hand. Harry began hesitantly. Dumbledore glanced down at the withered limb. Ah. You've noticed its progression. How long? Harry asked directly. Weeks, perhaps, Dumbledore admitted. Severus has done what he can to contain the curse, but its nature is to consume. It cannot be stopped indefinitely. Harry felt a lump in his throat. Why didn't you tell me? To what end, Harry? Would it have changed our course? Made our task easier? Dumbledore smiled gently. I preferred to use what time I have left productively, rather than dwelling on what cannot be changed. But after the battle, if we win, there might be a cure, or, Dumbledore shook his head. This is one journey I must make alone, Harry. But I am at peace with it. I have lived a long life, seen and done remarkable things. And I have had the privilege of knowing you, watching you grow from a brave child into an extraordinary young man. Harry blinked back unexpected tears. I'm not ready for you to go. Few of us are ever truly ready to lose those we care for, Dumbledore said softly. But you have grown beyond needing my guidance, Harry. Your command of the Dementors, a feat I would have thought impossible, proves that. It was luck, Harry protested. Or coincidence. My connection to death because of my mother's sacrifice, perhaps initially, Dumbledore allowed. But what you've built from that beginning, the relationship you've established with creatures feared throughout our world, the strategic mind you've developed, the leadership you've shown, that is all you, Harry. Your choices, your character. Dumbledore moved to his desk, opening a drawer. Which brings me to why I called you here tonight. He withdrew a small golden snitch. Do you recognize this? Harry nodded. The first snitch I ever caught. In my first Quidditch match. Precisely, Dumbledore smiled, holding it out. I'd like you to have it, a reminder of triumph against the odds. Harry took the snitch, puzzled. As his fingers closed around it, words appeared on its golden surface, "I open at the close." Sir, he questioned. Snitches have flesh memories, Dumbledore explained. This one remembers your touch, specifically, that you nearly swallowed it in your first game. I've enchanted it to open only at a specific moment, when you most need what it contains. What does it contain? A tool, Dumbledore said enigmatically. One that complements your unique abilities. You will understand when the time comes. Harry pocketed the snitch, recognizing that Dumbledore wouldn't explain further. They spoke for a while longer about battle preparations, Dementor deployments, and contingency plans. Throughout their conversation, Harry was acutely aware that this might be one of their last private moments together. As he prepared to leave, Harry turned at the door. Professor, thank you. For everything. Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled behind his half-moon spectacles. It is I who should thank you, Harry. Now, get some rest. Tomorrow may well bring the challenge of a lifetime. Harry returned to Gryffindor Tower to find the common room still active despite the late hour. Ron and Hermione were waiting for him, along with Neville, Ginny, and several other DA members who had chosen to stay and fight. What's the latest? Ron asked as Harry joined them. Voldemort's forces are approaching, Harry reported grimly. Battle within a day or two, probably. This news was met with solemn nods. These weren't children anymore, they were young warriors who had trained for this moment, who understood the stakes. The Dementors? Hermione asked. Ready, Harry confirmed. They'll form our outer defensive line, focusing primarily on Death Eaters rather than other magical creatures who might be less affected by them. Ginny moved to sit beside Harry, her presence a comfort he hadn't realized he needed. Over the past months, as he'd been consumed with Horcruxes and Dementors, their relationship had developed quietly but meaningfully. No grand declarations, just a growing closeness, a deepening trust. You should try to sleep, she told him, her hand finding his. You look exhausted. Harry nodded, though he doubted sleep would come easily. His mind was too full, strategy, concern for his friends, grief for Dumbledore's imminent passing, determination to end Voldemort once and for all. He rose, bidding goodnight to the others. As he turned toward the dormitory stairs, Ginny followed, catching his hand again. Harry, she said softly, whatever happens tomorrow or the next day. I'm with you. We all are. The simple statement touched him deeply. I know, he replied, squeezing her hand. That's what makes it all worth fighting for. Dawn broke cold and misty over Hogwarts. Harry stood atop the astronomy tower, looking out over the grounds where defenders were taking their positions. Order members, professors, older students, all preparing for the battle to come. And beyond them, invisible to most but clear in Harry's awareness, hundreds of Dementors positioned in a wide perimeter around the castle. They formed a deadly barrier that Voldemort's forces would have to breach. They're coming, Luna said quietly from beside him. She had joined him for his morning vigil, seemingly untroubled by either the early hour or the impending battle. Harry didn't question how she knew. Luna often perceived things others missed. From which direction? All of them, she replied simply. They're surrounding us. Harry extended his senses through his connection to the Dementors. She was right. Movement in the Forbidden Forest. Figures approaching from Hogsmeade. Disturbances along the lake shore. Voldemort was encircling the castle, preparing for a coordinated assault. I need to warn the others, Harry said, turning toward the staircase. Luna nodded. I'll watch the sky. The dragons might come from there. Dragons? Harry paused, alarmed. Voldemort has dragons? Oh, I don't know if he has them, Luna said vaguely. But it seems the sort of thing he might bring to a battle like this. Better to watch for them, just in case. Harry couldn't argue with her logic, strange as it was. He hurried down to the Great Hall, where Dumbledore was addressing the assembled defenders. Courage and unity will be our greatest strengths, the headmaster was saying as Harry slipped in. Stand firm, protect each other, and remember what we fight for, not just our own lives, but a future free from the shadow of fear. Harry made his way to where McGonagall, Lupin, and Kingsley were reviewing a map of the grounds. They're surrounding us, he reported. Moving into position on all sides. Kingsley nodded grimly. Our scouts reported the same. We estimate between 200 and 300 Death Eaters, plus an unknown number of giants, trolls, and werewolves. The werewolves will be in human form, Lupin pointed out. The full moon was a week ago. They'll be fighting as wizards, though possibly with enhanced strength and aggression. The Dementors will target Death Eaters primarily, Harry explained, indicating positions on the map. They're less effective against non-human magical creatures. McGonagall studied the deployment. And you can maintain control over all of them during chaotic battle conditions. Yes, Harry said with confidence born of months of practice. They understand our strategy and their role in it. A distant boom interrupted their planning, a sound like thunder, but on a clear morning. Everyone in the hall froze, heads turning toward the windows. They've begun testing the outer wards, Dumbledore announced calmly. Please take your positions according to our defense plan. House heads, conduct a final check to ensure no younger students remain in the castle. As the hall emptied, defenders moving purposefully to their assigned locations, Dumbledore approached Harry. It is time, Harry, he said quietly. Call your Dementor allies into battle positions. Harry nodded, closing his eyes to focus. He reached out with his mind, connecting to the hundreds of Dementors waiting at the perimeter. The attack begins. Move to your battle positions. Target Death Eaters. Protect our defenders. Wait for my signal to advance. He felt their collective acknowledgement, a cold surge of anticipation and purpose. Opening his eyes, he found Dumbledore watching him with undisguised fascination. Truly remarkable, the headmaster murmured. In all my years, I never imagined seeing Dementors as allies rather than adversaries. They have their own reasons, Harry reminded him. They're not fighting for us, exactly. They're fighting against what Voldemort represents, a violation of the natural order. Perhaps, Dumbledore conceded. But they respond to you, Harry. Only you. That is significant beyond mere tactical advantage. Before Harry could respond, another boom echoed across the grounds, louder, closer. The castle trembled slightly. The outer wards are failing, Dumbledore observed. Earlier than expected. Tom has grown powerful indeed. They moved quickly to the entrance hall, where defenders were taking cover behind hastily conjured barriers. Through the great oak doors, left partially open for visibility, Harry could see flashes of light as spells impacted the castle's magical protections. Lupin approached with a final report. Defenders in position. Evacuation complete. The secret passages are guarded, the room of requirement secured. We're as ready as we can be. Harry looked around at the gathered faces, friends, teachers, order members. Some showed fear, others determination. All waited for the battle to begin in earnest. A final, deafening boom shook the castle to its foundations. Windows rattled, dust fell from the ceiling. Then silence, a terrible, expectant hush. The wards are down, Dumbledore said softly. They come. Harry stepped forward, peering through the doors. In the distance, dark figures were advancing across the grounds from all directions. Death Eaters in their masks and robes. Hulking giants swinging crude clubs. trolls lumbering between them. And at their center, gliding forward with inhuman grace, was Lord Voldemort himself. Even at this distance, Harry could feel the Dark Lord's rage and determination. "Now, Harry," Dumbledore said. "Release your Dementors." Harry reached out with his mind, giving the command they had been waiting for. "Advance." The effect was immediate and dramatic. From all sides of the castle, Dementors descended on Voldemort's army like a dark tide. The temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the grass. Death Eaters faltered in their advance, some falling to their knees as the creatures of despair swept over them. Through the chaos, Harry saw Voldemort's reaction, fury mixed with something he'd rarely seen on the Dark Lord's face, uncertainty. Voldemort had expected the Dementors to be a factor in the battle, but seeing hundreds of them attacking his forces in perfect coordination clearly caught him off guard. "Impressive," Dumbledore commented. "But Tom will adapt quickly. Be ready." Indeed, Voldemort was already rallying his forces. His voice, magically amplified, carried across the battlefield, "Push forward. The Dementors cannot harm you if you cast your Patronus." Death Eaters began casting Patronus charms, silver animals erupting from their wands to drive back the Dementors. But many failed to produce more than wisps of silver mist, their fear and the Dementors' natural effect making the spell difficult to maintain. More importantly, while they focused on defending against the Dementors, they were vulnerable to conventional attacks. Order members and Hogwarts defenders seized this advantage, sending spells raining down on the distracted Death Eaters from the castle walls and towers. For a brief, hopeful moment, it seemed the battle might end before it truly began. Voldemort's forces caught between Dementors and defensive spell fire, unable to advance. Then Voldemort himself acted. Raising his wand, he cast a spell Harry had never seen before, a wave of pure magical force that pushed the Dementors back like a hurricane wind. The dark creatures tumbled through the air, their advance temporarily halted. "Now!" Voldemort commanded. "Breach the castle." Death Eaters rushed forward in the gap, firing curses at the defenders on the walls. Giants hurled boulders that crashed against the castle's stone facade. Trolls charged the main doors with battering rams fashioned from tree trunks. "Close the doors!" McGonagall shouted. "Defensive positions." The great oak doors swung shut with a boom, sealing just as the first trolls reached the entrance. The whole castle shuddered as they began hammering against the barrier. "They'll break through eventually," Lupin warned. "Those doors won't hold against giants and trolls for long." Harry was already regrouping his Dementor forces. "Circle around. Target Death Eaters who are separated from the main group. Focus on those casting the strongest patron uses first." The Dementors recovered from Voldemort's spell, reorganizing according to Harry's commands. They began picking off isolated Death Eaters, particularly those providing Patronus coverage for others. Through a high window, Harry watched the battlefield shifting. Voldemort had established a command position at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, directing his forces with precise, brutal efficiency. The main assault continued against the castle doors, while smaller groups attempted to breach windows and lesser entrances. "We need to thin their numbers before they get inside," Kingsley said, watching alongside Harry. "Once they're in the castle, our defensive advantage diminishes." Harry nodded, formulating a plan. "I'm going to concentrate the Dementors on the main assault group. If we can create enough chaos there, it might buy us time to pick off the smaller groups with targeted strikes." He sent new commands to the Dementor leader: "Mass your forces against the trolls and giants at the main doors. Don't try to feed on them, they're too resistant. Just create confusion, make them turn on each other if possible." The Dementor leader acknowledged, and Harry watched as the dark tide shifted. Dozens of Dementors descended on the main assault group, swirling around the giants and trolls like a living storm. The effect was immediate. The methodical battering of the doors became erratic as the creatures grew disoriented and agitated. A giant swung its club wildly, striking a troll instead of the door. The troll retaliated, attacking the giant with its battering ram. Within moments, the organized assault devolved into chaotic infighting. Now, Harry called to the defenders. Target the smaller groups while they're isolated. From the castle's towers and windows, defenders launched coordinated spellfire against Death Eaters attempting to breach side entrances. Without the protection of giants or the cover of a larger group, many fell to stunning spells, body binds, and more aggressive curses. For a brief period, the tide seemed to turn in their favor. Then a terrible, high-pitched scream cut through the battle noise. Through the window, Harry saw Voldemort striding forward, fury radiating from him in palpable waves. He pointed his wand at his own throat, amplifying his voice. "Enough games, Potter." The words echoed across the grounds. "Send your Dementors against me if you dare. Or come face me yourself." "Don't respond," Dumbledore said immediately. "It's a trap." But Harry was already thinking strategically. "He's trying to draw me out or force me to redirect the Dementors. Either way, he's revealed something important, he's worried about them." "Of course he is," Dumbledore agreed. "Without his Horcruxes, he fears death as much as any mortal. And Dementors represent a unique threat to him now." Harry studied Voldemort's position. The Dark Lord stood somewhat isolated, Death Eaters keeping a respectful distance. It was tempting, so tempting, to send all his Dementors against Voldemort directly. But Harry suspected Voldemort had prepared specifically for that attack. Instead, he tried a different approach. Continue harassment of assault groups, he commanded the main Dementor force. But to a smaller group, his elite units with whom he had worked most closely, he sent a different instruction: circle behind Voldemort. Approach from the forest. Wait for my signal to attack. "What are you planning?" Lupin asked, noting Harry's intense concentration. "A distraction," Harry replied. "We need to draw Voldemort's attention to one area while attacking from another." He explained his idea rapidly. It was risky, but if executed properly, it might create an opportunity to end the battle quickly. Dumbledore listened, then nodded approval. "A sound strategy. But I should be the one to confront Tom directly, not you, Harry." "With respect, sir," Harry said firmly, "I need to be visible to coordinate the Dementors effectively." And he hesitated, then spoke the difficult truth. "You're weakened by the curse. Voldemort would exploit that." Pain flickered in Dumbledore's eyes, not from Harry's words, but from the recognition of their truth. "Very well. But you will not face him alone." The plan came together quickly. While most defenders continued protecting the castle, a small strike team would attempt to engage Voldemort directly: Harry, Dumbledore, Kingsley, and McGonagall. Meanwhile, Harry would position his elite Dementors for a surprise attack from behind. "The moment Voldemort is fully engaged with us," Harry explained, "the Dementors will strike. They won't try to kiss him immediately, just disorient him, make him vulnerable. That's when we press our attack." "And if he escapes as he did before?" Kingsley asked. "That wraith form seems difficult to contain." "The Dementors believe they can prevent that transformation," Harry said. "Something about their nature interferes with that kind of magic." With the plan agreed upon, they prepared to move. Harry sent a final set of commands to his main Dementor force: intensify attacks on Death Eaters. Drive them back from the castle. Create maximum confusion. The castle trembled again as the battle outside escalated. Through windows and from tower vantage points, defenders could see Dementors swarming over Voldemort's forces, driving them to panic. Some Death Eaters fled outright. Others fired spells wildly, sometimes hitting their own allies. "Now," Dumbledore said quietly. "While Tom's attention is divided." Their small group slipped out through a side entrance, using the chaos as cover. They moved swiftly across the grounds, staying low and using what protection the terrain offered. Harry maintained his mental connection with the Dementors, coordinating their movements to provide additional cover. They reached a position about 50 yards from where Voldemort stood directing his forces. The Dark Lord was visibly agitated, sending jets of green light toward Dementors that came too close, though the spells passed harmlessly through the dark creatures. "He's vulnerable," Kingsley observed. Distracted, isolated from his main forces. Harry checked the positioning of his elite Dementor squad. They had reached their assigned location at the forest edge behind Voldemort, invisible to the Dark Lord but clear in Harry's mental awareness. "Ready," he confirmed. "On 3. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would attack simultaneously from their position, forcing Voldemort to defend against them. When he was fully engaged, the Dementors would strike from behind. 1, 2, 3. For spells launched simultaneously toward Voldemort, a blasting curse from Kingsley, a transfiguration attack from McGonagall that turned the ground beneath the Dark Lord to quicksand, a binding spell of extraordinary complexity from Dumbledore, and a disarming charm from Harry. Voldemort sensed the attack an instant before it reached him. With inhuman reflexes, he conjured a shield that deflected Kingsley's and Harry's spells, while sidestepping McGonagall's quicksand. Only Dumbledore's binding spell partially connected, golden threads wrapping around Voldemort's legs before he severed them with a slash of his wand. "Potter," he hissed, red eyes finding Harry instantly. "Finally showing yourself." Harry and the others spread out, forcing Voldemort to divide his attention. They continued casting, maintaining pressure from multiple angles. "Your army is failing, Tom," Dumbledore called, his voice calm despite the intensity of his spell work. "Your Horcruxes are destroyed. Surrender now, and face justice." "Justice?" Voldemort laughed, a high, cold sound as he deflected another volley of spells. "There is no justice, only power. And I remain the most powerful wizard alive." To demonstrate this claim, he cast a curse so violent that the ground between them erupted in a line of explosive force, forcing them all to dive for cover. But the attack left him momentarily focused in one direction. Harry seized the opportunity. "Now!" He commanded his elite Dementors. From behind Voldemort, a dozen Dementors emerged from the forest edge, moving with uncanny speed. Before the Dark Lord could turn, they surrounded him, their collective aura of cold and despair concentrated on a single target. Voldemort staggered, his next spell dying on his lips as bone-deep cold enveloped him. For a wizard who had feared death enough to split his soul 6 times, being surrounded by death's embodiments was paralyzing. "Attack!" Harry shouted to the others. "While he's disoriented." They pressed forward, casting simultaneously. This time, with Voldemort's attention divided and his power diminished by the Dementor's presence, their spells found their mark. Kingsley's blasting curse struck Voldemort's shoulder, spinning him around. McGonagall's transfiguration trapped one foot in suddenly solid stone. Dumbledore's binding spell wrapped around him more securely. Voldemort howled in rage and pain, fighting against both the physical attacks and the Dementor's crushing aura. With desperation lending him strength, he blasted the stone from his foot and shredded Dumbledore's bindings once more. "Enough," he screamed, raising his wand high. "Fiend fire." A massive serpent of magical fire erupted from his wand, growing rapidly to engulf the area around him. The Dementors scattered, unable to withstand the intense heat. Harry and the others fell back, shielding themselves from the expanding inferno. Through the flames, Harry saw Voldemort preparing to escape, not by transforming as before, but by apparition. The anti-apparition wards around Hogwarts had fallen with the other protective enchantments. "Stop him!" Harry shouted, raising his wand. Expelliarmus. His spell shot through a gap in the flames, catching Voldemort just as he began to turn. The Dark Lord's wand, the twin to Harry's own, flew from his grasp, arcing high through the air. Time seemed to slow. Harry saw Voldemort's eyes widen in shock and fury. He saw Dumbledore raising his wand for another attack. He saw the airborne wand beginning to descend. And he saw a Dementor, the leader, the one he had worked with most closely, glide through the fire as if it weren't there, directly toward the wandless Voldemort. No! Voldemort screamed, wandless but still dangerous, his hands raised as if to physically push. Something went wrong with this response. Please try again. Please start the next chapter here. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.